It's a Friday edition, stormy edition of the Bill Michaels Show. It is a sad day today. Sad day today. Longtime friend, former president of the Green Bay Packers, and the guy that hired me, Bob Harlan, has passed away. And today we're going to talk a lot about, sports in general, but we're going to remember Bob too, because there is there's a need to understand, if you don't, to understand his impact on the Green Bay Packers and his legacy, which continues to live on today. He's the guy that was there through the bad times and saw what the franchise was early on with Lombardi and coming out of that era, and then where it went. And it pained him to watch that franchise just founder and not be able to really come back until he took it over and made some decisions. And they were not popular. His decisions were not met with total embrace, we'll say, but ultimately, they were the right ones, for sure. Welcome in today. We got a special day today. Mark Murphy, the former president of the Packers, is going to join us coming up here in about 15 minutes. The voice of the Green Bay Packers, Wayne Laravey, after that. I had a lot of people reach out to me yesterday that said, you got to get Brian. Longtime partner. Brian Noble and I, we hosted and sat in the chairs of the Green and Gold Postgame Show, the Packers Postgame Show on the network, for a long time. I think it was 7 or 8 years we were there together. Brian's going to join us today. So we're going to have Brian on the program, and then Mike Clemens is going to give us his thoughts and remembrances. We got all of that coming up today. I got to tell you, I got a really, really nice note. Back yesterday, I got to admit, when I was in a meeting, and I was coming out of a meeting, and that's when Grant texted me and said, hey, in case you didn't know, Bob Harlan it just crossed. Bob Harlan passed away. And I didn't know. I didn't see it. I was driving, and I ended up going on Grant's show yesterday and kind of telling a few stories and things that I've told before, because that's just the way it is. I mean, it's not like the stories change. But then my phone started blowing up. But one of the things I did is, as I was talking to Grant, I pulled over at a Quick Trip over off of Holy Hill. And I had just seen Kevin Harlan. We just saw him. We were at Super Bowl, and we had a chance to, give a hug and catch up. And so I wanted to make sure I reached out. And, man, if I can get through this. Kevin sent me a really nice note. I'm not going to read you the note because it's kind of between him and I. But it just basically expresses how much he loved and respected his dad. And he said, it was just great seeing you guys at Super Bowl. Let's spend some time together, sending you my best. I mean, which Kevin Harlan is, the class trickles down, right? From dad to son. He's sending me his best. And I'm like, hey, you just, give a big hug for the family, for you guys. But he said he was the most wonderful dad and man. And the family loved him so much. So I got a really nice text this morning from Kevin Harlan. So. But Bob Harlan, the architect of what is now, passing away at the age of 89 yesterday. Sad day. I'll be honest, I didn't know if he was sick. I didn't know. I just thought Bob was still kicking, and I'd probably see him at a game this year or something, because it's just the way it is. So it was just it was sad. It was sad to learn that. It was just a kind of a kick to the gut because I didn't know. And I said back in 1998, I got my first, when Jim and Max announced that they were no longer going to be the voices of the Packers broadcast. I had just by happenstance sent a resume to WTMJ, to the Packers, and I got a call back. A gentleman named Rick Belcher had called me back at the time. He was the program director at WTMJ, and said, this is our vision. This is what we're thinking about doing. And we did kind of a phone interview, and he said, hey, can you come up? Yeah, absolutely. So I met in December of 1998, and then they were meeting, and I found this out, they were meeting with Wayne Laravey and talking with Wayne Laravey as well. And when I then came back in January of 1999, we met in Chicago. And I had an interview there, and they said, "Hey, look, I think this is what we want to do. Can you hang on a little while?" Well, I had another interview, at a television station a radio station in Arizona. And I flew to Arizona, and I was going to take the job there, actually. And I got a call back. Bob Harlan called me and said, "Hey, they liked you. I'd like to talk to you a couple of minutes." And I was actually going to the golf course. I said, "Absolutely." So I talked to Bob probably for about a half an hour. And he said, "Hey, this is the vision. Wayne was going to be the play-by-play. Larry was going to move up into the booth. There's a possibility for maybe me to do sideline stuff, but Bob had his hand in it." And Bob being a media guy himself. And so I said, "Well, I appreciate it, very much, Mr. Harlan." I said, I'm out here. I really don't have a contract deal. I'd like to, obviously stay close to my kids and, my family in Ohio, but I got to go where I got to go. And so I went and played golf. I came back, and I had a note from Rick Belcher at the time that back then was fax. They had sent me a fax, and there was the preliminary contract. And I was like, wow, okay. Long story, but I ended up coming here, and it was the best thing I ever did. And then I came to town the first week of March in 1999. I was supposed to be here for all of March and not do anything. I was going to then take over and do some stuff in April for the NFL draft. But I didn't. I was supposed to just come here and learn the city, learn the state, talk to people, and just kind of get acclimated, And I was here all of 2 days. I threw everything I had into my boat. I threw my bed, any furniture, everything I could just stack under the cover of my boat, and drove it up here. And I got a place in Wauwatosa at the time. And I was here about 2 days. I remember I was building my bed, and I got a phone call that said, "Hey, Len Casper's sick. We want you to do Sports Central on WTMJ." And I said, "Oh, okay." I'm digging out of boxes now, all my stuff, because I don't have anything. And I walked in. Nobody knew who I was. Nobody told anybody that I'd been hired. It was a shock to the people that were working, because there was one guy there that, God love him, he took it like a champ, but he thought he was going to have the job, and they didn't tell him that he didn't have the job. I just walked in the door, and at the time, WTMJ Radio, they were playing Ode to Beauty with Gordon Hinckley on the weekends, and it was classical music and, things like that. And then here I come putting, Rush and Metallica on there. And I remember one of the sales guys calling the studio saying, "Who in the blank is this guy?" And at the time, I kind of thought, well, this is not going to be long-lived, because I have no idea why they hired me. After a while, I understood it. But the day I finished my first ever show, Bob called me and said, "I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that." And it was a show that I did where I didn't know anything. So I said, "Hey, why don't everybody talk to me about what you want to tell me, rather than me telling you everything that I want to tell you?" And it was really kind of a get to know each other show. But the one story I told about growing up as a kid, sitting in front of the television on Sunday, if it was, the Bay of Pigs, Tampa Bay and Green Bay, going back to those days, my mom and dad were huge Bart Starr fans, and we talked about that on the air. Bob invited me up, and remember, it was March. Bob invited me up. It was a beautiful day. It really was. It was a really weird day. It was warm. It was nice. It was sunny. And we went outside, sat in the stadium, and the rest, if you've paid attention to me on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok over the last 24 hours, I told the whole story. But I just sat out there, and he just wanted me to learn the history of the Packers and appreciate it the way he did. And the one thing he told me, and he was always true to his word, was, "I will never, ever critique anything you say as long as it's not personal. Just promise me you won't get personal." I said, "Absolutely. Whatever you need, I'm here." And I'll, because he knew I was very brash and different than what they had. And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." So that's what we did. We had a really good meeting, walked me through, introduced me to, the reception desk and the people in the front office. And and Ron Wolf came over to me, and I'll never forget, Ron Wolf shook my hand and said, "Sideline's not going to be it, kid." And I looked at him, and because I was supposed to be the sideline guy. And he said, "Sideline guy's not going to be it, kid. You give away too many secrets." So I became the postgame guy, and I did stuff with the pregame with Dennis Krause, and I did the postgame show, and they teamed me up with Brian Noble, and Brian Noble and I were together, and we had such a good time for 6, 7, 8 years. It was such a blast. So, but Bob was always gracious, always great. I remember my time with him on the campaign trail for the Brown County tax to make sure that Lambeau Field got renovated and the finances stayed stable, and they were able to keep that franchise viable. And I just, Bob is such a class act, and he would call me every now and then, or as we got older, we texted, but every now and then he would just really like something I said or said he appreciated. He was the only guy that did both. He would call me up when something was wrong, and he would call me up when something was great, and he'd say thank you. He was the only guy that ever did that. I mean, I'll never forget that, and he exuded class. And Bob Harlan, definitely going to be missed. So today we're going to have Mark Murphy joining us here in just a couple of minutes, so stay tuned for that. Bottom of the hour, Wayne Laravey, I believe, is going to be joining us. And then we got a whole lot of other stuff. We got Mike Clemens is going to be here, and Brian Noble is going to be here. So we got all of that upcoming. If you want to chime in today and give us your thoughts and or stories, or, I got a lot of them over on Facebook and TikTok and Instagram last night for people that responded to the post that I put up. So really, I always said Bob Harlan had always his finger on the pulse of the fans. And I had so many people say he gave me tickets. He sent me a letter back. He gave me a call back. I mean, just all that kind of stuff. So we appreciate all those stories. So today, kind of remembering the guy that is, we know there's Favre, we know there's Holmgren, we know there's Rodgers, we know, Lombardi, we know that, but the legend that kept it all going is Bob Harlan. 877-867-1670. Text us 608-321-1670. YouTube.com/Bill Michaels Show. YouTube.com/Bill Michaels Show. You can find us on Twitter, on X, @Bill_Michaels. You can find Grant at Wisco Grant. Wisco Sports Zone is a great place to track us down as well on the app. Email the program, thebillmichaels@gmail.com. The website, simply thebillmichaels.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We're also on the Twitch app, the Kick app, the LinkedIn app. And tomorrow's television show is 6 o'clock Central Time, 6 o'clock. Because they've got some WIAA state stuff going on, which is great. So we get bumped up to 6 o'clock Central Time tomorrow evening on My 24 TV in Milwaukee. Up next, the former president of the Green Bay Packers, Mark Murphy, is going to join us right after this.
Covering Wisconsin sports like a blanket, this is the Bill Michaels Show on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
Bill Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
We had to make a change. We'd gone through 24 years of mediocrity. And those two men, I'll give Ron Wolf and Ted Thompson credit for making tough decisions. And they did everything the way they felt was best for this organization.
Welcome back. Those are the words of the late, great Bob Harlan. Such a special guy. We remember Bob today. Bob and that legacy that he left with the Green Bay Packers, and the fact that they are still here, they are viable. And this portion of the program brought to you by our friends at Burn Pit Barbecue, burnpitbbq.com. That is burnpitbbq.com, veteran-owned right here in the state of Wisconsin. And they have grown exponentially, and they're one of the best veteran-owned companies in the country now. But go to burnpitbbq.com. They owe it all to you, Wisconsinites. burnpitbbq.com. That is burnpitbbq.com. Joining us now on the hotline, I wish we were talking under better circumstances, but a longtime friend and the former Packers president, Mark Murphy, is here. Mark, how you doing?
Great, I'm doing well. Like you, I'm really sad to hear of Bob's passing.
Yeah, I remember when I was telling a story when Bob hired me years ago when I was doing the Packers radio network, and I kind of remember all the words of wisdom that he gave me at the time. So when the torch was passed to you, what stuck out to you about Bob?
Oh my gosh, he was so generous with his time. I look back on it. And of course, I was new. I had no connection to the Packers, and he and I overlapped. I think we overlapped for 3 months, and he's just so giving of his time, so supportive, so helpful. And I don't know if you remember, originally the John Jones was going to be replaced by to be president.
Yeah,
and he ended up having health issues, and so Bob stayed on beyond the age of 70, and boy, he was so helpful to me, and it couldn't have been more gracious, and just that's the way he is. He's just such a good person. He was great.
I remember Bob telling me a long time ago that he would answer the phone and talk to fans and all that kind of stuff. And I remember wondering out loud one day on the air, I wonder if Mark Murphy's going to do that too. And I got flooded with people that called and said, yeah, Mark's actually called me back or sent me a letter or whatever, or helped us out with tickets. And, if there's anything that any president takes from the legacy of Bob Harlan, it's that, hey, never forget about the fans because they're what makes this whole thing great.
Well, and especially, with an organization as unique as the Packers, we're owned by the fans, and you need to treat them with respect. Now, that's not to say there were sometimes you get calls and like, okay, well, yeah, we're on a losing streak, not doing well, and they're sharing their opinions. But no, Bob was such a gentleman, and setting aside, talk about him as a person and what a great person he was, and so positive, and always had time for everybody. But he completely turned the trajectory of the Packers organization around. You think from the 60s, the great success with Lombardi, but then the 70s and 80s. Bill, when I was playing with the Redskins in the late 70s and early 80s. My secondary coach is a man named Richie Pettibone, and I remember I made a bad play once, and in the film review, he said, "Murph, you keep playing like that, we're going to ship you off to Green Bay." that, that's how Green Bay was viewed then. It's like nobody wanted to go to Green Bay, and Bob obviously started the process of changing that. And what he did with the stadium is phenomenal. I mean, in the 70s again, in the 80s, Lambeau Field was kind of just a regular stadium. It was like a green tin box, and he completely changed it. And boy, I can only imagine the time and effort that he put in to getting that referendum passed. That was that was really something special. And what a difference! That money that the state invested, it's put the Packers and Lambeau Field now in position where financially, the next renovations we paid for by ourselves.
Yeah.
Didn't need state money.
I remember being with Bob kind of on the campaign trail because we were covering it obviously very heavily. And I remember being with him on the night of the referendum, and we were sitting at one of the halls up there, and he was sitting in a chair and he was still shaking hands and talking to people. And I talked to him a couple of times. I said, Bob, what's plan B? Because he was really sweating. And he said, Bill, I don't have a plan B. I don't have a plan B. I don't know what we're going to do. And he was really genuinely scared. And like you said, what he did with
it was a close vote.
Yeah.
Right? 53 to 47. That was close.
Right. And with everything that went on, I thought, and then after it was developed, what Bob said at Outgoing, I remember the day that you guys were being introduced and you were doing your press conference, and I was talking to Bob, and he said, Mark, I gave him the same advice I had, was just hire good football people, let them do their thing, worry about the business. And I got to think, Mark, that he said, hey, I'm turning it over to you. We've got a new start now, and now you've just got to expound upon it. And what you've done with Titletown and everything that's gone on up there to keep that franchise viable, it's amazing. It's the smallest media market in all of major sports, anywhere. And it thrives and survives. And that was all started by Bob, and then passed the torch to you and what you guys have accomplished.
No, it's a very unique organization. And one of the things that's so unique, and that Bob started this, was the annual tailgate tour. And Bob and I, my very first year, he came along on the tailgate tour, and just to see him interacting with fans across the state, and and then the interaction also with current players. And we normally would take 3 current players and 3 former players on the tailgate tour, and that's. Bob started that. That's so unique.
Yeah. And he always like I said, he always wanted to touch base with the fans. The one thing I was always appreciative of, he came from the media side of things, so he kind of got it. That, hey, when things are really good, you don't necessarily need us, but when things are bad and you want to promote different things like charity events and things like that and good things in the community and that feel good, he always said, hey, I'll never forget you guys. And he always told me, he said, say what you want, as long as it's never personal, I'll never critique it. But he would call, he would say, hey, this is wrong, or this is what something said. And, but he was always good like that, but he would always call when he heard something really nice too. And I never forgot that about Bob. That was the class. And you were that way. I'd see you in the hallways and you never, came up and railed on me or anything like that. And it was always something that I felt was just passed down and respected.
Yeah. And I think, I feel Ed's the same. Ed Policy is the same way. Well, and the other thing with Bob, he had a media PR background.
Yeah.
So he's very, very sensitive to what the issues that you were facing.
Yeah. What if you got one memory to share before I let you go of Bob that you could just kind of reach into the bag and say, this is special to me? What would that be if you can tell it?
Sure. I think it's in that very first few months, and on the tailgate tour, just seeing him interacting, as I said before, with fans, and just he was so natural, and he was very, very eloquent in terms of when he spoke. It was really you could tell that it wasn't his first rodeo.
Yeah.
he was so genuine, and the other thing that I noticed is how beloved he was by the fans here, and that continued obviously, beyond beyond his retirement.
Well, his legacy continues
But
on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Lambeau Field is what it is because of him. You know, it was nothing really special before, and success of the Packers. You know, Bill, one of the I've always, you know, how you measure the success of a hero is, did you leave the organization better than you found it? Boy, that's not even close. You think of what the Packers were when Bob started and where they were when it ended. It was completely different.
Yeah, no doubt. Mark, it's a pleasure. Congratulations on everything that you guys have accomplished. What started with Bob, you expounded upon. Obviously, the NFL draft, everything's been great. Appreciate your time so much, okay?
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks so much, Mark. There you go. Mark Murphy, former Packers president, joining us for a couple of minutes on the hotline and the Schneider Orange hotline, the Schneider Big Orange hotline. But just good stuff. Just to kind of remember it that way. I mean, when you think about it, and he was right, it was the big green tin box, and Bob saw a vision. And I've said this before. Think about this. If you're a Packers fan, think about this. For the $200 and close to $80 million, I think is what it was, they renovated Lambeau Field and expounded upon it to what it is today. Now, in comparison, at the exact same time, $680 million was put into Soldier Field. And I'm not going to disparage Soldier Field, but if you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. And you know how I feel about that. But for what Bob did, for the amount of money they spent and garnered, and the renovation, and the fact that Lambeau Field is an absolute bucket list on many sports fans and just casual fans in general, it's on their list to be a part of that. And then for what Mark did, to bring the NFL draft there, to then expound upon the outer properties, to build Titletown, to buy up additional properties for additional income and money for the organization, to keep them viable in the top 10, top 15 when it comes to the teams in the National Football League, and to have the waiting list and the fan base and the amenities, and then continue to kind of tinker with the structure and be able to make it state of the art each and every year. It's for the smallest market in all of professional sports is just phenomenal. And it all started with Bob Harlan. More of the Bill Michaels Show next.
Covering Wisconsin sports like a blanket. This is the Bill Michaels Show on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
Bill Michaels will resume in 5 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 4 minutes. Phil Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Phil Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Phil Michaels will resume in 1 minute. Phil Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
Welcome back. Bill Michaels Show. Continuing on. This portion of our program brought to you by good friends out there at Sloppy Joe's Saloon and Spoon in Hubertus, Wisconsin. And don't forget about Smoke on the Water right there in Okauchee. If you're looking for a fish fry tonight, Sloppy Joe's Saloon and Spoon, you walk in, they've got a terrific fish fry, and it's like the old-fashioned sitting on the bar waiting for you. It's just a good Wisconsin pub and restaurant. Then there's Smoke on the Water out on Okauchee Lake, and the ice is starting to melt, the rain's falling, but you can look out the windows and start dreaming a little bit about summer on Okauchee. The Smoke on the Water BBQ Okauchee. That's Smoke on the Water BBQ Okauchee, and they have so many tremendous dishes out there as well. Their chef out there is fantastic. Smoke on the Water BBQ Okauchee, Sloppy Joe's Saloon and Spoon on Hubertus in Hubertus. There you go. Today is a day where we're just going to kind of reminisce, I guess. There's going to be some other things, and whatever happens to break, we'll get into for sure. But today is also a day for remembrance. Bob Harlan passing away yesterday at the age of 89. Can't believe Bob was 89 years old. Just didn't seem like it at all. But nevertheless, Bob passing away. So Anyway, that being said, opening up the phone lines, 877-867-1670, 877-867-1670. If you want to find us, please feel free, go ahead and do so. And also all of you over in the cheap seats, I'll try to get some of your stories up as well. And we'll try to let them be viewed, so to speak. So let's do this. Let's go to the phones, talk to Tony listening to us in Sussex. Tony, how you doing today, man? What's going on?
Good, Bill. I got a really cool story about Bob Harlan with our family.
Yeah.
As back in 1992, my brother-in-law Paul was dying of brain cancer. He was 41 years old. Avid Packer fan. We went to many games together. So I wanted to try to get him to a game. Before he passed, he was getting to the point where, he was in a wheelchair, things like that. So I called the Green Bay Packers and, I requested if I could purchase some wheelchair seats because I knew they had a disabled section, So 2 weeks later, I get a call from Bob Harlan. And for 20 minutes, we had a conversation. I told him the story, told him, what was going on. He put aside 2 tickets and also a parking pass that I parked my car probably 10 feet from the elevator that goes up to the skybox.
Wow.
And we went to that game. It was against the Cincinnati Bengals. It was in September of 1992. And, it was about maybe 2-3 minutes left in the game. Don Mikowski, I think he got hurt a little bit earlier before that, but they brought in a quarterback named Brett Favre, who I never really heard of. No one really heard of him. And with about 2 minutes left in the game, I could tell my brother-in-law was kind of, falling asleep almost. He was slumping a little bit in a wheelchair. And I said, Paul, you getting tired? You want to go? He goes, oh, no. They're going to win this game. And I go, and I was kind of at the time more concerned with getting them out of there, with traffic.
Yeah.
But I said, okay. And sure enough, Brett Favre throws a touchdown pass to a receiver called Kendrick Taylor, I believe his name was.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks at me and he goes, now we can leave, with a big smile on his face. And then he ended up passing away October 24th, about a month later. But I just thought that was the coolest thing that anybody really could have ever done. They were actually the Brown County Sheriff Department seats that we got.
Gotcha.
But I mean, he made that happen. He took the time to call us back and was such a gentleman and just so personable on the phone. He was just a regular guy. Here I'm talking to, one of the top guys on the Packers,
Sure.
So, yeah, and it was nice because it was a rainy day, kind of misty, rainy, and we were in the skybox on the 20-yard line, nice and warm, and there was, concessions were there. So I just wanted to tell that story. This is one of the great things this man did just for the normal fan.
Yep. Nope.
So that's about it, Bill.
Yeah, no, I that's the way Bob was. Thank you. That was, and I didn't mean to cut him off. I apologize for that. But I'm glad he got his story in. That's the way Bob was. That's the way Bob was. I can't tell you how many times, either at training camp or like Mark Murphy had stated a little bit earlier when they were doing the tailgate tour and such, just Bob interacting with fans. And even I'll give him credit because during tough times, Bob interacted as well. It wasn't like he just, answered the phone during good times. I mean, he answered the phone in bad times as well. So, yeah, he was just, I've always said there's 2 people that were in Green Bay at the time that I was working there specifically that were the men of the people. One, first and foremost, Bob Harlan. Number 2, Irv Favre. It just, that's the way it was. Those 2 guys, they were just men of the people, without a doubt. 877-867-1670, 877-867-1670. Let's go out to Albany with our buddy Derek. Derek, how you doing today, man? What's going on?
Hey, Bill. Sorry to hear of Mr. Harlan's passing. I got to meet him back in 1989. I've been out to Green Bay many times, and of course, I told you I ran a Packer fan club, and I ran into him at the airport, and he was so gracious. He talked to all of our group and asked them, their interest in the Packers, how long they've been Packer fans. He was the guy was just like patron saint of the Packers. He was just awesome. And years later, when the torch was being passed from Mr. Harlan to Mark Murphy, I called the Packer offices, as I had at other times. We would get autographed footballs for our charity events and so forth, and we had that kind of inroads with the Pack. And I left a message with Bob Harlan, and I went out running errands on a day that I had off. I come back to my place, and I got an answering machine message from Bob Harlan. Yeah. Are you kidding me?
Right.
I mean, he was such a gracious man. And, we as Packer fans should be so proud of that lineage. Lombardi and Bob Harlan and Mark Murphy and now Ed Policy, so much to be proud of. And I wanted to mention, and I told Grant off air, everybody listening right now, if you go to YouTube, and I know you're familiar with the series, Bill, it was the Legacy series that the Packers did, all the different eras of the Green Bay Packers. The one that really features Bob Harlan and that great transformation back to prominence, you go to YouTube, you go to Green Bay Packers Legacy and put in Return to Glory, okay?
Yeah.
It's 1990 to 1999. And man, oh man, Bob Harlan is featured prominently because he's the guy that made it happen. But if you're a Packer fan, you're going to be somewhere between wanting to cry and wanting to run through a wall. It's fantastic.
Right. No, I completely agree. I've seen that. And if you get a chance to go back and rewatch it, I was just thrilled that when Bob passed the torch, Bob was still a part of the Packers celebration when they won in 2010, 2011, and won a Super Bowl, that Mark included him, because Bob didn't have to be there. Mark didn't have to include him, but Bob was still a part of all of that and was still invited to come in and celebrate what they had started with Ted and Aaron Rodgers, obviously. And then when they had Charles Woodson already, when they get Clay and everybody, and Mark invited him back, and to be able to be accepting of that as well, and to be a part of that, and to understand the legacy, as Mark had kind of told us a little bit earlier, and then to be a man of the people the way he was. He was a really special guy, no doubt, man. Derek, appreciate the phone call, bud. 877-867-1670, 877-867-1670. If you want to hit us up, by all means, go ahead and do so. Again, 877-867-1670. Find us. We'd love to talk to you. Just kind of remembering Bob Harlan today, on one of these days where it like I said, I didn't know he was, I didn't think he was ill. I just saw Kevin, said, how's your dad? Doing okay. Hanging in there. That was kind of that thing when we were talking out at Super Bowl. So we'll talk with Wayne Laravey, the voice of the Green Bay Packers, coming up here at the top of the hour. Wayne and I, it's kind of unique because Wayne and I got hired. We went through the same orientation together, believe it or not, because we got hired at the same time. There was this whole thought process regarding the Packers, and they were, him and Larry obviously getting to know one another and becoming part of that, the broadcast and everything. And Brian Noble and myself doing the post game and taking a handoff from Wayne and having some great memories between myself and Brian. And obviously we brought in Irv Favre, and Irv was a good part of the broadcast for a while. So just so many good memories. And Bob Harlan was a part of it. I'll never forget. We were sitting in, you know what? I'll let Brian tell the story and maybe I'll share it with him. But the Packers won the NFC North, and they were going to the postseason. And Brian had asked Bob if, the broadcast team gets rings if they win a Super Bowl. And Bob, sitting there with his NFC North hat on, kind of paused for a moment and looked at us and said, yeah, you do. And Bob never forgot that. Now, unfortunately, Brian wasn't around in 2010 when they ended up winning a Super Bowl, but Bob never forgot that. And that was really cool. It was one thing I'll never forget. 877-867-1670, 877-867-1670. If you want to shoot us an email or something, you can. You can also give us a call. Let's see here. What do we got? Jose says, as an owner and longtime Packers fan since 1964, I'd like to pass along my deepest condolences to the Packers organization and the family of Mr. Harlan. One of the biggest moves Mr. Harlan made was the day that he hired Ted Thompson as the GM and stripped Mike Sherman of the responsibility. The reason I mention this is that you truly believe that had Mike Sherman, he would have been the GM in 2005. Do you think he would have drafted Aaron Rodgers when the Packers made the selection based on Sherman's record? As GM, my answer would be no, but my biggest fear is what if that really happened then after Favre retired? Where would the Packers quarterback situation be moving forward? We would have been back maybe to the dark ages of the 70s and 80s. Thank you, Mr. Harlan, for making the Packers relevant again, and RIP. You think about I remember Bob telling, and Ron Wolf telling me too, that when Bob hired him, Lindy Infante was the head coach at the time. And Bob talked to Ron and said, hey, this is your deal. You do what you want to do. And I'm just going to take care of the business and stay out of the way. And Ron Wolf had been going to practices and seeing Lindy Infante and the guys and everything. And I remember Ron had told me, and then Bob had later reiterated this. Ron went to Bob and said, yeah, I'm making a change. I'm making a change. And Bob kind of, hesitated for a second and said, it's your team. Do what you need to do. And then Lindy Infante was let go. Mike Holmgren was hired. And Bob, we're going to hear Bob here in a little bit. Bob, in actually the next segment, Bob explained that. And the rest is history as to what went on in the bringing in of Brett Favre and company. So when we come back, in Bob's words, how he kind of started the construct of the Green Bay Packers, that's going to come up next. You're going to want to hear it. Bob's voice telling you how things started. And it makes you smile, and it makes you cry all at the same time, knowing that Bob is no longer with us. This portion of the program brought to you by our friends at Marquardt RV, and we can't do what we do all throughout the great state of Wisconsin and beyond the borders without Marquardt. Thanks to them for being a big part of the program, helping us out with the charitable stuff, helping us out with Big Unit Foundation. Such great people. And we raised money last year. We hope to do it again this year. MarquardtRV.com. That is MarquardtRV.com. And if you're looking for somebody with great sales, great service, and they really take care of you, they want to make sure that whatever you spend your money on, your hard-earned money on, you get the most out of it and you understand it. And that's what they do. Their service is second to none. Go to MarquardtRV.com. Again, MarQuart, MarquardtRV.com. The words of Bob Harlan, how it all started, coming up next.
Ready? This is the Bill Michaels Show on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
Bill Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
Sometimes I get a good.
I am really looking forward to tonight. I really am. Got a business meeting, but it's also with a really good friend and a group of people. We are heading down to Calder Club tonight, where I get to combine two things. One is my love of Point Brewing, and I'm going to meet with the owner, Joe Martino, tonight. He's in town this evening, and then they're going back for the Bach run tomorrow. And I get to go to Calder Club. I mean, Joe is a huge fan of Gino's. Joe's down there all the time. And Joe's a huge fan of Gino's, and we get to go to Calder Club tonight and eat. And there's some people that they want us to meet, and I'm excited about that. I'm excited about working with Point Brewing again this year, and I'm excited about going down to Calder Club tonight. I'll tell you that right now. So good food tonight. I can't wait. I'm going to fast all day. I just am. And if I see you down there tonight, hello. And if I don't, then take my word for it. It's the best Italian food you're ever going to have. And San Giorgio, the pizzeria in Napolitano, right next door, 838 Old World 3rd Street. Right there in Milwaukee. Bob Harlan's own words about the beginning of the Packers and how things all culminated. Here you go.
What the Packers are doing now is what we went through twice while I was there. And both decisions turned out to be two of the best decisions in the history of the organization. So I don't think you might want to question something now, but I think you should sit back and let time go by and see where it is. And what the future holds, you can't make a judgment on draft day. But Ron had just been in town a couple of months when he came to me one day, and he said, Bob, I want to make a trade for this quarterback from Atlanta. And he said, it's going to cost us a first-round draft choice. Are you okay with that? And I said, Ron, when I hired you, I told you that you had full and complete authority and control of the football operation. And I promised him there would never be any interference from either the board of directors or the executive committee. I said, you do what you want to do. And he went out and did it, and it turned out to be, I think, the best trade in the history of the Green Bay Packers, and maybe one of the best trades, probably arguably one of the top 5 trades in the history of the NFL. But Ron was willing to do those things and take chances. I mean, nobody thought we had a chance to get Mike Holmgren as a coach, but Ron convinced him to come to Green Bay. And certainly no one thought we had a chance to sign Reggie White, and Ron was able to do that too. But when we talk about angry mail, I got a lot of phone calls and a lot of letters following the Favre trade. People saying to me, who the heck is this Wolf guy you hired, giving up a number 1 draft choice? And I understood the frustration of the fans. We had other needs, and we needed a number 1 draft choice and everything. But like I say, it turned out to be a monumental move. Now, when you turn around and see what happened to Aaron Rodgers, as you remember, Aaron was expected to go either first or second in the draft, and he sat there and sat there and sat there. And I sit in the draft room every time we do this, and Ted Thompson finally came over. We were drafting 24th in the first round, and Ted came over to me when we were on about number 18 or 19. He says, Bob, can we go out in the hallway and talk for a minute? And I said, sure. So we go outside, and he says, if Rodgers is there at 24, he said, I've got to take him. And he says, it's not going to be popular. We're going to get a lot of flack from it. But he says, I got to take the best guy on the board. That's what I owe this organization, and that's my philosophy, and that's the best guy. I said, Ted, tell you the same thing I told Ron. It's your ball club to run. So Ted goes in, and all at once Aaron is there. we take him, and I'm certain right now there's 23 clubs in front of us that wish they had that choice over again. But it was so violent, even in our building when it happened. We had a draft party down on the floor of the atrium, and the fans started booing when the choice was announced. And it didn't bother Ted, and it didn't bother Ron, and I admired them for that. They had the guts to go out and do what they felt was best for the Green Bay Packers, and they were going to do it no matter what people thought of it. And we caught a lot of angry mail from the Rodgers thing, but I think you could really sit back and say not only was Favre the best trade we ever made, but Aaron Rodgers might have been the best first-round draft choice we ever made, because one's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, the other one will be there soon, and they were two brilliant moves. It took a lot of courage to do it, but that's why we put football people in charge of our organization. You know, we wanted... Our executive committee had controlled things for years and years. They were brilliant businessmen, very capable, very talented people. But they weren't football people. They weren't strong in football. And so we finally made the decision, we've got to get a football person in here, and I've got to get the board and the executive committee it's got to be hands off. And, you know, as you look at the Packers from the outside, when you see a 45 board of directors, you get a little alarmed because it sounds like, boy, there's going to be a lot of interference trying to run that team. But fortunately, our board totally agreed with it. We had to make a change. We'd gone through 24 years of mediocrity. And those two men, I'll give Ron Wolf and Ted Thompson credit for making tough decisions. And they did everything the way they felt was best for this organization.
There you go. That's the voice of Bob Harlan in the beginning. And I remember when he talks about, you know, we had a draft party. I was hosting it, and the booze rained down. I'll never forget it. And Ted came up and explained why, knew that Brett was starting to waffle a little bit, and the rest is history. But I was there. Wayne Laravey and I were hosting that party and sitting on the stage, and we were a part of that. And then everything continued on, I guess, if you want to say it in that particular pretense, because they went on to win a Super Bowl, obviously. 1 hour down, 3 more yet to go. Coming up next, the voice of the Green Bay Packers, Wayne Laravey, is going to join us. Stay tuned. We got more. The Bill Michaels Show continues right after this.
This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Well, Wisconsin center Nolan Winter is listed as day-to-day with a lower body injury. That was the word from the Badgers yesterday, less than 24 hours after Winter was forced out of the win over Maryland with what appeared to be a left ankle injury. He was unable to put any weight on that leg as he was helped to the locker room. Coach Greg Gard said they were hopeful they avoided the worst outcome, though it is unclear how long Winter will be out. If he's forced him this time, guard John Blackwell was confident the Badgers will find an answer.
Just next man up. We've had guys out. I've been out for a game. BC's missed a game. Ozzy's missed a few games. I think we've had a next man up mentality. It's just picking our brothers up. But Nolan's a fighter. If Nolan has to go to play, he's playing. Whether it's one leg or two legs, he's playing. But we're going to keep battling for Nolan how he battles for us.
Wisconsin will close out the regular season tomorrow when they travel to take on Purdue. A win would likely clinch the 5 seed in the Big Ten tournament. Turning to the Bucks, they've lost 4 straight, are looking to get back into the win column as they host the Utah Jazz at the Pfizer Forum tomorrow night for a 7 o'clock tip.
For nearly 40 years, ABC Wisconsin Apprenticeship has been helping men and women transform themselves into highly skilled trade professionals. These skills are in demand and provide strong wages and benefits for a bright future. If you're a hands-on person who likes the feeling when you get projects done, apprenticeship could be for you. Go to buildyourcareerwi.org or just search online for ABC of Wisconsin.
Well, legendary Packers president Bob Harlan passed away yesterday. Current president Ed Policy called Harlan's tenure leading the franchise transformational as he oversaw the rebirth of the team in the early 90s, including a win in Super Bowl 31, along with being the force behind the needed renovation of Lambeau Field. Harlan was 89 years old. For the Wisconsin Sports Zone Network, I'm Ebo.
Welcome in, hour number 2 of the Bill Michaels Show. Somber day today. Learned yesterday afternoon the passing of Bob Harlan. Meant so much, not to just, Packers fans, me personally. I told the story in the first hour of the show, interviewing with a gentleman named Rick Belcher, who was the program director of WTMJ at the time. And then eventually talking to Bob and getting that blessing. And I know Wayne and Larry, they were moving into the booth, and Jim and Max were moving out, and Larry was moving up off the field. And there was the thought that maybe I'd be on the sideline, and Ron's like, nope, you guys give away too much. So I ended up teaming up with Brian Noble, and we had a good 7-8 year run, and we had a lot of fun. And what I thought was one of the best broadcast groups, Wayne and Larrivee and Wayne and Larry are second to none. And we had a great time with our after the fact. But man, it was. I'm going to say it was the heyday. Still good though. You got our friends Wayne Laravey and Larry McCarron still kicking, and Wayne Laravey joining us on the hotline. Wayne, I go back to the day that you and I were going through orientation together. Back at WTMJ and getting ready to do Packers broadcast and all that kind of good stuff. But Bob Harlan meant so much to that organization, man.
Yeah, he certainly did. One of the principal people, I know you've been talking about it all day, and we will continue to, but he was really the guy, Bill, who turned around this franchise. You have to go back. You have to take how he came to power in the context in which it happened. Back in the late 80s, Judge Perrins was getting set to step down as president and CEO. They had never had a leader of that franchise from Curly Lambeau on that had not been a native Green Bay resident. And, Bob was so it was under those circumstances, they kind of broke the mold a little bit and said, okay, Bob, you're not from here. You're from St. Louis or whatever, and actually from Iowa originally. But, the job is yours. And that was crucial, and that was huge, and Bob took it from there.
I've always told people when we get into conversations about you, because you have a history, you went to the Kansas City Chiefs, you were with the Bears, and you ultimately came here. This was the job you always coveted. This was the franchise you wanted to be a part of, because, and Bob wanted me to understand how special it was the day that I met him and he took me out into the bowl. But he wanted you to understand, and you knew it, but he wanted you to understand how special this franchise was because he had such an affinity for it, right?
He did. And, he came in, Dan Devine brought him in from Missouri. Bob had been working in the Cardinals. I'm sure you've talked about this, the Cardinals front office on some pretty, I believe the year they won the World Series, which was 67, they beat the Red Sox. I only know that because I hate the Red Sox so much. But at any rate, he was part of that, and he came to Green Bay. Dan Devine was hired from Missouri and came to Green Bay and brought Bob Harlan with him to do a variety of jobs. Taking care of it. He did a lot of the people jobs, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. The things that had to get done, whether it was PR per se or not or whatever. He handled contracts, he handled negotiations. By the time 1989 rolled around, when they were looking for a new president and CEO, Bob had done everything in that building. And again, it was a small pillbox of a building at the corner of Bridge Road and Lombardi Avenue, but nonetheless, he had done the whole thing, and he was a perfect choice.
When you first met Bob, can you recollect that? Can you? Because I told the story on Instagram and Facebook and such, because that was my first real meeting with Bob. But could you recollect that?
Yeah. It was my first NFL game. It was a preseason game. I was 23 years old, just had gotten the job as the play-by-play voice of the Chiefs. And we're playing the Packers in Green Bay, which to me I was so excited about because I'd never been to Lambeau Field. And so it's pregame, and, the players are out kind of milling around and warming up and everything. And one of the Chiefs tight ends, their starting tight end that year, Walter White, came up to me and said, where did Bart Starr make that famous quarterback sneak? And I said, geez, I don't know which hash mark it was, the right side or the left side. I'm not sure if this was the right end zone. And so there was a guy standing over there in a coat and tie and that type of thing. And so he was, I could tell he was with the Packers. So I kind of motioned him over. I said, do you know where Bart Starr made that famous run? And he took Walter White and I over to the 1 yard line, left hash mark, the south end zone, and showed us and the whole thing. And it couldn't have been nicer. And I think he was impressed that a player like Walter White actually was aware of the history of what happened right there on that yard line. And so, that was my first meeting with Bob. And then I got to know him really well because his son, Kevin, was finishing up at Kansas, the University of Kansas. I was in Kansas City, and we were the first KCMO in Kansas City, and I believe it was 1980. We were the first to go to a 2-hour pregame show, and we hired Kevin Harlan to come in from Kansas on the weekends to do that for us, and he ran the whole thing, produced the whole thing. It was phenomenal. Correspondence around the league, everything else. So I got to know Kevin really well, and then consequently, obviously, Bob more and more. And then Brian was PR director, or not director. He was working under Ken Baldessari as an assistant in the PR department of the Bears in the mid-'80s. So I really got to know the family inside and out in that regard.
Yeah, the team itself, I was talking about this earlier. Mark Murphy was on with us, and I thought it was so nice that when Mark took over as president, he still included Bob when they won the championship. And I remember all of us being in Dallas and Mark making sure that because Bob was there when he brought in Ted, and Ted brought in Aaron, and it kind of goes on from there. But he wanted to make sure he was included in all of that because he knew how the tradition, and he knew the era that Bob had started with bringing in Ron Wolf and Mike Holmgren and Brett Favre, and the rest is history. But I just remember listening to your words in your call as the game wound down. I had it on in my ear inside AT&T Stadium and listening to you guys talk, and obviously because I was going to come up and do the postgame show, but I remember listening to all of that and Mark talk, and then still including Bob, and it was such an incredible moment down there on the field at AT&T Stadium to be able to kind of close your eyes and relive all of that. And remember, Bob was a part of that as well.
Yeah, he really was. He put a lot of the main pieces in place. And I remember years later, he was talking to me probably around 2017 or something like that. And, he said, hey, listen, it's been years, but the two major pieces that I helped put in place, and that was Ted Thompson coming back and then Mike McCarthy being hired as head coach. He was still very proud that those two guys were in those positions at that late date. And, things change, obviously, as you go along. Nothing stays the same. But Bob had a big hand in not just the revitalization of the franchise. That's what puts him on the Green Bay Mount Rushmore. But also in keeping it going, making the tough decisions that, hey, I got to bring Ted Thompson in here because it's not working with Mike Sherman as coach and GM.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. When was the last time you had a chance to talk to Bob?
It's been a while. No, I really did. It's been a couple of years. I'm close still with Brian and Kevin, and even Mike. I had dinner with Mike last spring. Bob's three sons, but I knew he was. I said, geez, maybe I had to just pop a call, but I didn't know what their status was and that type of thing. So I never did. It's unfortunate because. Bob was always a good conversation. I do remember one time I met with him and sat down and talked about the whole thing and recorded it at his favorite restaurant, at favorite breakfast place, the Bay Inn, which I believe is where Mike Clemens stays when he's in Green Bay, and where Dick Schaap stayed when he wrote Instant Replay with Jerry Kramer. So, but Bob, we had a long conversation that day. That had to be, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago.
I do want to ask you a little bit about football. Obviously, Goody said they're going to bolster the secondary, and the words are they want to be aggressive, and they're making some salary cap space, and they're looking for guys to come back. And I got to think that, you get your horses back in Micah Parsons and Tucker Kraft, and that's the safety blanket when it comes to the offensive side of the football and a little bit of growth. Excited for what it is the draft is going to hold for this team and maybe what they might do in free agency?
Yeah, I think so, Bill, because, you could still get good players in round 2, and you should be hitting on players in rounds 2, 3, and 4. It doesn't always happen that way, but the Packers have their picks. It's not just a first-round draft. There's more. There's 6 more rounds to the draft. So I think the Packers are in a position where they can replenish things a little bit on that roster with young players. The other factor is free agency. How much will they be able to do there? Who will they bring to Green Bay? I think what they'd like to do from the outside looking in is try to get some of these positions of need taken care of with a free agent or 2, and then go about their business in the draft, using the draft for what it's meant to be, and that is the future, not necessarily plugging immediate holes on your roster.
I don't think some people seem to think they're far away. Being at Super Bowl, being at the Combine, you kind of feel where some of the gaps are on this team. But I keep thinking to myself, if they can, there's a couple of things. If they close out some of those games, if they, if and buts and all that kind of stuff, whatever the saying is, but I don't feel they're that far away. I think there are a couple of pieces, getting the offensive line shored up, getting the defensive front shored up, getting guys back from injury. I think this is still a really good football team, and I still think they're going to be vying for the top spot in the NFC North. Do you?
Well, Bill, the Packers lost 5 in a row at the end of the season, still won 9 games.
Yeah.
Everybody in Detroit thinks the bottom fell out on the Lions. They won 9 games. Everyone thinks Minnesota went through an absolute – people are reacting in Minnesota like they won 4 games. They won 9 games. Mm-hmm. These teams in the NFC North are really pretty good football teams. So let's start with that. You're not starting with a 4-13 team. You're starting with a 9-win team here. And I understand pieces change and there's attrition and everything else, but these are pretty good teams. All right. I'd like to start with a 9-win team and let's see where we can go from there. So I think there's reason to be optimistic on all these teams in the NFC North. I'm a little concerned if the Bears were able to get a Max Crosby or even a Trey Hendrickson, what might happen down there. But the rest of this division isn't going anywhere.
Yeah, I looked and I saw that Anzalone might be a guy that might be on the market, the little middle linebacker out of Detroit, and I really like his style of play. I think he's just a dog. If they get any kind of a quarterback situation straightened out in Minnesota, they're going to be good. And like you had mentioned, if they can figure out the defense in Chicago and make that exponentially better with what they have, although they just lost their center, which I think is a big loss. Because that, to me, Wayne, when you lose your center, it was like when Ragnow retired. It just never really got off to a good start, and then Elton Jenkins goes down. The center position was up in flux for a while. I just think if you can get the offensive line solidified in Green Bay, they can be just that much better. And we all know that the word was used as assassin when it comes to a guy in the pocket, in a clean pocket. Jordan Love is. That's what they called him down at the Combine, some of the stat people. And I just think if they get the offensive line straightened out, this thing's going to be even better than what we witnessed last year.
Yeah, you know what? I thought the offensive line was a problem virtually all of last year. It just didn't work out. Obviously, they bring in Banks and Aaron Banks, and he had some injuries early on, got off to a bad start. I didn't think Elton was ever comfortable at center, and I know for years the personnel people have been telling me that he's probably better at center than he is at guard, and he was an all-pro guard. It just didn't quite work out there, and then he got injured. They just had to keep shuffling, and they didn't have the experience behind the people they were shuffling to pick up the slack. And it was tough year on the offensive line all around. They have to get that figured out. There's no doubt about that. You're exactly right. Defensively, I think they've got, I understand what Goody said publicly, and you understand why he said those things publicly. But there's no question they've got to be better at cornerback. They have to be. There's just no question about that. Ask any people around the league, and that's the first thing they point to. Secondly, I still wonder what they're going to do at inside linebacker. Is Quay Walker, is he going to walk, or are they going to find a way to get him back? I don't know. But, and I understand he's never probably going to be a Pro Bowl or all-pro inside linebacker, but he's an excellent athlete. And if you don't ask him to do too much, I think he can be a very effective player. He became an excellent tackler. The Packers' defense as a whole, among the league leaders in short tackling last year. And I thought their linebackers, the speed in the linebacking core, Bill, that secondary level, all this stuff, jet sweep stuff and quick passing to the running backs and wide receivers, none of that worked against Green Bay because they had great speed in the linebacking core and at safety in Javon Bullard, who was a heat-seeking missile. So, I really think I'd like to see them maintain that athleticism if they can in that linebacking core, because I think that was good.
Wayne, great to talk to you. I wish we were talking on much better circumstances, but we'll get you back on again real soon, specifically around the draft. And I always appreciate your time, pal. Thanks for answering the phone.
All the best, Bill. Good to talk to you. Take care.
Thanks, buddy. Talk to you soon. There you go. Wayne Laravey, the voice of the Green Bay Packers, joining us for a couple of minutes on the hotline, sharing some of the memories of Bob Harlan. Talk a little football. You got to throw that in, but the memories of Bob Harlan continuing on today. This portion of our program brought to you by our friends, Suburban Harley-Davidson, family-owned, community-minded. They've been there 50-plus years. If you're looking to ride, they have the classes. You can ride, learn how to ride, and ride safe and preventative. That way you're always safe. Your head's on a swivel. You're good to go. Plus, if you want a bike, a new one, a used one, they have that. Motor clothes, parts, accessories, tremendous service department. They are the entire package when it comes to a Harley-Davidson dealership. That is Suburban Harley-Davidson, family-owned and community-minded, Main Street in Thiensville, Wisconsin. Again, go to suburbanharley.com. That is suburbanharley.com.
This is the Bill Michaels Show on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
Bill Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
Marinette, Wisconsin. God, I love that place. The City USA, as they call it. Marinette's got some good stuff coming up. If you have not been to Marinette, Wisconsin, you've got coming up, Jason Sheff is going to be performing there. He's the lead vocalist from the band Chicago. you're looking for a great night out, maybe a good weekend appearance, March 14th is coming up rather quick. It's a week from Saturday, a week from tomorrow. Next Saturday, March 14th, Jason Schaff, the lead vocalist from Chicago, going to be in town. Tickets are $40 for the general admission, $70 for the VIP. But think about this. If you're going to go into town from outside of the area, call our friends at the Independence Stay or the Holiday Inn Express. Tell them what you're coming there for. Okay, say, I want to get a hotel room. Going to be coming in on that Saturday or Friday or whenever it is you want to get there. And I want to go to the Jason Schaff show. I want to go to the concert. And you get, by staying at the Independence Day or the Holiday Inn Express, you get a free ticket. So you get some tickets. It's fantastic. It's a great deal. So you get the room and the tickets all included. Now, if you want to go to VIP, you upgrade it, obviously, which gives you a photo, meet and greet, all that kind of stuff. But nevertheless, it's a good time. So Jason Schaff, the longtime lead vocalist for Chicago, is going to be in town April 9th, which is, I believe it's a Thursday night. Charlie Barron's is doing a show there as well. Tickets are on sale for that for $30. There's table sponsorships and such included in that. So by all means, you got some good things going on in Marinette, Wisconsin. And once you get to summer, Marinette's got so much going on. So much going. They have everything from shopping downtown. They continue to make the downtown more attractive and fixing it up. They've got they've got fishing tournaments that go on there, and so many great kind of charitable things that go on the weekends. Got a lot of bars and restaurants up there. I got to tell you, if you just want to go walk around and enjoy yourself up there near the lake, hell yeah, Marinette, Wisconsin, man. As they say, expanding horizons. And if you want to see everything Marinette has to offer, go to marinette.wi.us. That's marinette.wi.us. Love me some Marinette, Wisconsin. Up there and just south of that in Peshigo is our friends at Forgotten Fire Winery as well. There's another reason to go there. But marinette.wi.us. There you have it. 877-867-1670, 877-867-1670. You want to find us, please feel free. Go ahead and do so. Again, 877-867-1670. You can also send us an email, and that's just simple. It's real easy. It's just thebillmichaels@gmail.com, thebillmichaels@gmail.com. And you can text us as well, 608-321-1670. Spencer in Green Bay, great show today. As a kid, I grew up in the 90s. I'm spoiled by Packers football. So great to reminisce and hear all the great stories of Bob Harlan and how the Packers I grew up watching were built. To me, he arguably might be the second most important figure in Green Bay Packers history. Thanks. That's Spencer in Green Bay. Stout 82 guy says, love the tales and the stories regarding Bob. Keep them coming. Also heard Ebo talk to a reporter this morning on his show. He mentioned the only person he met as nice as Bob was Dick Bennett when he came to the U of Wisconsin. Dick, great person as well. Played basketball for Dick many moons ago. Dave in Monona says, hey, Grant, you have a big fan up at the Score, Tony, who's on 12 to 2 on Lakeshore and the Lakeshore show. Okay. Didn't know that. Dave in Monona.
That was from Dave from Monona?
That's saying Dave from Monona.
It's the nicest thing I've ever heard him say.
I know, right?
And it wasn't even that nice. It was just him passing along a fact.
Right.
Interesting. I hope he's okay.
There you go. Right. Let's see here. What else do we have? Coach Plyokai just said that the Bob Harlan announcement happened before or after the show yesterday. It happened after. Because the announcement for Bob Harlan was made, what? About, it was
like 4:30,
4:30, something like that. Yeah, you're right, about 4:30, because I was driving home when you called me.
Yeah, you did 10 minutes on my show last night, which was, by the way, thank you again for doing that.
No, my pleasure.
It's a little bit of an odd dynamic to flip. I was saying on the air after we wrapped up that it felt a little bit like I was taking my dad to school, showing him my locker. This is where we sit at lunch.
No, that's fine.
But it was good. It was very good. Thank you again for doing that.
Yeah, that's kind of like when I go home with Ernie. Same thing up in Viroqua.
Exactly.
Up there. Yeah, good stuff. Hey, coming up here in about 35 minutes, my former partner, Brian Noble, is going to be joining us. People have always asked, whatever happened to Brian? Where'd he go? Brian moved from Green Bay. He had a daughter that was ill at the time, and he moved out to Henderson, Nevada. His wife, Cindy, took over. She was working at the shops there in one of the casinos. And Brian was coaching some high school football and, taking care of his dad. And, things have changed in his life, but we're going to kind of reminisce a little bit about some of the fun we had, Brian Noble and I, and obviously under Bob Harlan and his guidance at the time and when we were doing the Packers postgame show on the Packers Radio Network. So I'm going to kind of relive a few of those stories with Brian as well. And there's a good one regarding Mike Sherman, and we got to tell it while we're on the air together. But it's one of the classics. So we're going to talk with Brian Noble coming up here after the top of the hour. Our buddy Steve says, what a sad day for not only Packer Nation, but for all the NFL. He was a consummate gentleman and a class act. Since he was instrumental in getting the atrium built, I think the Packers need to name the atrium the Bob Harlan Atrium. Rest in peace, Bob. Thanks for making Green Bay Packers the class act they are today. That is our buddy Steve. I will say this, and there's been people that talked about statues and naming and things like that, but I'll say this, that, and I tried to get him on today, and I just didn't get the response back yet. Maybe he still will, who knows? But I tried to get Jerry Jones on today. And Jerry, I'll never forget, before they built AT&T Stadium, Jerry Jones, the Cowboys were playing in Green Bay, and Brian and I were up in the press box. It was really early before the game, too. And we were up in the press box, and Jerry had walked by, and we just kind of said, hello, Mr. Jones. And Bob Harlan had introduced us. And later that day, I was down on the field, and Jerry Jones had come over and maybe for 4 minutes, was just asking about the stadium and some of the things that the newly renovated Lambeau Field we thought were cool. And then Jerry Jones came to the atrium just before we were ready to go on the air. And I could see him in the back walking around. Everybody knew who he was, but everybody was paying attention. It was Brian and I and Irv, and, everybody was paying attention to the Packers win, and they were giddy for that. And it was after the game, and Jerry was getting ready to go down to the visitors' locker room and then do his, thing, and then jump on the bus and head back with the team. But I've always said that you look at AT&T Stadium, and Mike's been there numerous times. I've been to AT&T Stadium as well. They have the Hall of Fame inside. They have certain digs really nice for the media. They did things in regards to luxury suites that Jerry took away. At times, a lot of luxury suites were luxury suites, and they didn't have individual bathrooms in them. Jerry took that from Lambeau Field and said, you know what, that's a great idea. That way everything is contained. I know it's little things. It may sound stupid, but it were all ideas that Jerry took into AT&T Stadium. Now, Jerry wanted this giant, 110,000 plus seating capability, and he wanted the stadium to be, the actual Taj Mahal of all of the NFL football stadiums. But there was a lot of ideas and a lot of things. I've always said, I may not, agree with Jerry when it comes to running a football team, but to the business side of things, really good. He took a lot of ideas and listened and said, what do you need? What do you like? What do you appreciate? What do you not like? What does not suit your needs? Because he wanted to take care of everybody coming into the stadium. And I remember Bob Harlan walking him around, and Jerry just kind of taking it all in, and that experience. And so when you talk about the business side of football, yeah, Jerry Jones, Robert Kraft, those guys, the ones that started building their own stadiums and taking up the property around it and making money for their own franchises, yes, that's very innovative. But the stadium itself and the business of football on the inside of some of those stadiums, that was starting to come from Bob Harlan and what he had done in the renovation of Lambeau Field.
Well, I know we mock Jerry, but he's got a couple of championships. And yeah. I think him and Bob Harlan, the late now Bob Harlan, have a lot in common in that they are running, or they ran franchises that you couldn't convince someone that the Dallas Cowboys weren't what they are now before Jerry Jones took over, or with the Packers, right? Someone my age, it's like, hey, you wouldn't believe that in the late 80s, early 90s, the things up in Green Bay, it's nowhere, you wouldn't recognize it.
Right.
But these men, Jerry's still running it, and Bob Harlan kind of passing down. Derek and Albany talked about the lineage, but the ball that they started rolling turned their franchises into something now that, it's 5, 10, 20x what it was. So I think Jerry and Bob Harlan have a lot of like in that way. Yep. Different owners, different types of people, but both, took over a franchise and completely transformed the thing.
I agree. You look at, you look at what Robert Kraft did with his own stadium and the business side of things. You look at what Jerry did. You look at what Stan Kroenke did with SoFi Stadium. And, you look at what's gone on when they changed and moved Levi Stadium. They moved out of the base of San Francisco down to Santa Clara. The Seahawks, when their ownership group at the time was going to put money in, and they were trying to do a lot of the same things that the Packers had done. You look at Lincoln Financial, the same thing down there. I mean, you can look at some of these owners that have put their own thumbprint, their own money invested into these stadiums to take partial ownership or full ownership of these things. A lot of the ideas came out of Lambeau Field and came out of what Bob was doing at the time. Let's do this. We'll step out. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We got a lot more to get to. If you've got some stories, give us a shout. We'd love to hear from you. And we can also talk a little football and sports as to what's going on. Don't forget, coming up top of the hour, Brian Noble, my longtime partner for the Packers postgame show on the Green Bay Packers Radio Network, is going to be joining us coming up here in just a little bit. This portion of the program, the big run is tomorrow. The big Bach run is tomorrow. It looks like the weather's going to be really good, too. The Bach run.
My parents are going. They're very excited. Yep.
Are they really? That's cool. Last year was so much fun. I got to be the starter, and then the fact that the gun didn't fire, I had to fire that thing twice for it to get it to go off after we counted it down. But it was such a fun time, and they're going to get thousands of people up there for the Bach run tomorrow in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. Point Brewing excellence since 1857, and good luck to everybody running in the Bach run tomorrow.
Covering Wisconsin sports like a blanket. This is the Bill Michaels Show on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
Feeling lucky? Then roll into Potawatomi Casino Hotel Milwaukee this March for Lucky Rollers. Every Thursday, we're giving away over $70,000 in prizes. Play with your Potawatomi rewards card for entries, and you can roll out with $550 in reward play. Or get lucky and win your share of $16,000 in cash. Lucky Rollers, only at Potawatomi. More info online. Must be 21 and a rewards member to play.
Bill Michaels will resume in 5 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 4 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
Welcome. You know, Cousin Subs. Yeah, they've got tuna. They've got some crab mix stuff. So yeah, you don't necessarily have to get meat today if you want to do the Fish Fry Friday type of thing. Stick with the theme and go to Cousin Subs and fill up for a lunch or even a dinner if you're just going to be sitting home tonight and maybe checking out a game or something, or just kicking your feet up, watching it rain, maybe a fire in the fireplace and a Cousin Sub in hand. That's the way to go. Cousin Subs right here in the state of Wisconsin, based here since 1972. Join the Sub Club, and they've got catering, and you can check out everything it is they have to offer and earn rewards points as well. Go to cousinsubs.com. That is cousinsubs.com. Good stuff. Good stuff. Excuse me. God, man, I got so much. Emails are just coming in. Tim says, great tributes today to Bob Harlan. I was shocked to hear him pass. I did not realize he was 89 years old. I just thought that maybe Bob would live on forever and outlive all of us as a Packer legend. His legacy will always stand tall in Green Bay. That is from Tim. James says, hey, Bill, great discussion with Wayne Laravey, and I'm looking forward to hearing Brian Noble come up on your program. You and Brian were always the best. Still to this day, we talk about Bill Michaels and Brian Noble as the benchmark for the postgame show for the Green Bay Packers. Can't wait for Brian to join you on the air. So, James, thank you very much. Mike says, the tributes to Bob Harlan continue to pour in. Myself and my son met Bob at training camp one year. My son was 11 at the time. Bob actually walked him in behind the gates and let him touch the turf. It was the coolest moment in my son's life to that point. Never forgot it, and even grabbed a little bit of grass. We still have it in his room in a baggie, even though he's 26 years old now. He never forgot that day. Bob Harlan made it special. That from Mike. Derek says, hey, Bill, I just love all the tributes to Bob Harlan. As somebody who lives here in Texas, I love to hear about somebody in an organization that does so much good and touches so many people. And you're 100% correct. Had it not been for Bob Harlan and the renovation of Lambeau Field, who knows what would have happened to the Green Bay Packers. And I agree with you in the comparison between Soldier Field and Lambeau Field. I've been to both. It doesn't compare. For the money that was spent in Green Bay, and he's got in parentheses, honestly, versus the money that was taken, and he's got taken in parentheses, in Chicago, it doesn't even stand to compare them to together. Lambeau Field by far is the bucket list. That is from Derek. Derek, appreciate the email. A lot of emails coming in. A lot of text messages too. 877-867-1670, 877-867-1670. If you want to find us, please feel free. Go ahead and do so. Again, 877-867-1670. And you can also track us down in the text verse, if you will. Hit us up in the DMs and all that kind of good stuff. You can text us 608-321-1670. I did see that the Cleveland Browns, one of the notes was that the Cleveland Browns today are restructuring Deshaun Watson. And that's going to free up about $36 million in cap space for the Cleveland Browns. And that, which is a lot of money. Watson did not even play last year, rehabbing the Achilles. Set to have an $80.7 million cap hit this past year, the largest cap hit in NFL history. Watson, do you know how old he is, Grant, by any chance? If you had to take a guess how old Deshaun Watson is?
My guess would be 28.
30.
Is he really?
Yeah, 30. That's it. I was thinking this guy's got to be 33, 34. 30.
My thought process was, well, he's probably a little bit younger than it feels like.
Yeah.
Just because he's been a story in the NFL for what feels like forever.
Right. 30 years old. They fully guaranteed $46 million in salary this year. Originally signed the 5-year deal worth the fully guaranteed $230 million deal upon being traded to Cleveland before the 2022 season. Between the suspension and injuries and just the overall terrible play, it's limited him to a total of 19 games. 19 games since 2022. That's it. And for the QBR, which is qualified for his total QBR for that period of time with the 19 games, with all qualified passers, he has the lowest quarterback rating of all quarterbacks in that period of time. Although he is expected to compete for the job with Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel, but Deshaun Watson taking a restructure so they can get $36 million in cap space. Is it fair to say that with the defense they have, if they can get anything together offensively, that they could be like this dark horse in the AFC North?
Oh, yeah. Why could they not be the Houston Texans? Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
Man. Let's go to John listening to us in Eau Claire. John, how you doing today, man? What's up?
Hi. Well, actually, it's Joe.
Oh, sorry about that, Joe. Sorry. Yeah, he did have Joe written down. I read it wrong. I'm sorry.
I got a brother named John that we don't talk about. Anyway, no, quick Bob Harlan story. 1987, Don Mikowski's rookie year. Most fans will remember he wore the number 5. And I sent a letter to Bob Harlan, who at the time was an administrative assistant. He still wasn't the president at this time. And I sent a letter just saying, hey, I thought that number was retired and blah, blah, blah. And my wife came home and the phone rang. And my wife is a diehard Viking fan. And the phone rang and she picks up the phone and she knew that I had talked about, getting hold of somebody with the Packers. And it was Bob Harlan on the phone, who had to have looked up my number of information because I didn't put my phone number in the letter. I still have a copy of it. And he said, my wife says, well, who's calling? And he said something to the effect of, well, I don't think you'll believe me when I tell you. And she says, is this somebody with the Packers? And he said, yes. And she said, yep, I believe you. And so he got information as far as when I'd be home and everything from work. And he called me that late afternoon, and we talked for about 15, 20 minutes on the phone. And he explained the whole rationale as far as, well, I can't retire every number, and it turned out later Mikowski, went to number 7. But the first thing I think of when I think of Bob Harlan is just, he answered his own phone, and the neater thing too is years later after he wrote his book, I went to the atrium and he was having he was signing his book or meeting with fans after a shareholders meeting, and he signed a copy of his book. And I mentioned to him about the story, and he just sat there. He almost repeated verbatim the phone conversation he and my wife had.
Really? That is so cool. That is so cool.
Just the coolest, just you look up class. I know it's, you look up class and dignity in the dictionary, and it should be his picture there.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just, they broke the mold when they made him.
Mm-hmm.
And but I just had to share that story. That was the first thing I thought of, and I was surprised I didn't know about it until I came home from a high school basketball game about 9 o'clock last night. Went online, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Bob Harlan died. And but anyway, and but that's my story, and Packerland's a little bit less, now because he's and Mark Murphy did a great job filling his shoes, and I remember all the stories about Harlan going door to door, during the referendum and everything. And there was, like you said earlier, there was no plan B.
Yeah, there wasn't.
He put everything. He put all of the chips to the middle of the table on that.
Right.
So,
yep.
All right.
Agree. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks so much, and I love the reminiscing. And it's a sad day, but it's one of those things. Don't regret that it's done. Be happy that it happened.
Yeah, exactly. Nope, I agree.
All
Appreciate
right.
the phone call. Let's do this. We'll break. When we come back, more from Bob Harlan. We heard him talk about, the beginning and the taking of Brett Favre, the taking of Aaron Rodgers, the taking of Jordan Love. And he talked about the Packers drafting the current quarterback not that long ago. We're going to hear in his own words, Bob Harlan, when we return. Stay tuned. We got a whole lot more of the Bill Michaels Show upcoming this portion of our program. I'll tell you what, I got a nice text message from our buddy Dwayne. Dwayne's Cover It All today. Not only is Dwayne signed up for the Bill Michaels Open, which I got to talk about later because it's selling out fast. There's not many spots left. I didn't realize how fast this thing was going to sell, but I can tell you all the time. So he got a hold of me today and said, hey, we're signed up. We're ready to go. He's got his people ready to go. So we're excited about that. But also, big sports fan, huge Packers, Brewers, Bucks, all that kind of stuff. And he had texted me today and said, hey, I know you were close to Bob and, condolences and such. So good to hear from Dwayne today. Whether it's a boat cover, upholstery, awnings in front of your business, above your patio, out back, whether it's gym equipment, office furniture, whatever it happens to be, give them a shot. Wisconsin-based, and that's the big thing. We love the local businesses. Wisconsin-based. Call Dwayne directly, 715-870-2119, 715-870-2119. You need an heirloom chair refurbished or something, they can do that too. 715-870-2119. Again, 715-870-2119. Or just check it out at Dwayne'sCoverItAll.com. That's Dwayne'sCoverItAll.com.
Covering Wisconsin sports like a blanket. This is the Bill Michaels Show on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
Bill Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
I'll tell you what, coming up this weekend, it is special. It is special. I'll tell you why. I believe it's tonight. I got to check. I'm going to check here. I should do this on the air, but I'm going to. Yes, it's tonight. Nice Ash, 323 West Main Street, downtown Waukesha, the Nice Ash Cigar Bar. Always a great place to go. I'm going to try to get down there after we go to dinner tonight. We got a dinner, and then I don't know how late it's going to go. But tonight, Whammy Hall of Fame saxophonist Warren Wiegratz and Mike DeRose are taking the stage 9 to midnight tonight. Oh, yeah. Yeah, going to be good. Everybody knows Warren. Warren has played the national anthem. He was a long time in the Warren Wiegratz band down at the Bradley Center and such. Was always there for the Bucks. Has played all over the state. But tonight, him and Mike DeRose. I told you there's some really good music that comes through the Nice Ash. Tonight, him and Mike. Tonight only. Going to be down there at the Nice Ash Cigar Bar. So if I get the hankering, which I always do, I'm heading down to Nice Ash tonight. So I'll see you down at Calderon Club for a while and then over to the Nice Ash. 323 West Main Street, downtown Waukesha. See you down there tonight. Bob Harlan, we heard him in the first hour and some of his words from the past. And then he talked about the drafting of Jordan Love, the next quarterback in succession. Take a listen.
Well, you're talking about the most important position in the sport, probably the most important position in any sports. And if you're not covered there, you don't have a prayer in this league of being a competitive team. I'll tell you a couple of stories that happened in the draft room during my time. Many years ago, there was a quarterback coming out of Notre Dame named Joe Montana. And Red Cochran was our scout who covered the Midwest, and Red had looked at Joe Montana all these years in college. And when we got to draft day, Red kept walking through the draft room saying, everybody, we got to take Montana. This kid will do nothing but win. And we didn't take him in the first round or second round. When we didn't take him in the third round, Red got so upset, he left the draft room and didn't come back. And we all know what Joe Montana went on and did. On the other hand, in 1980, we took a quarterback out of California named Rich Campbell. Took him with a top 10 choice in the league. And I'm sitting in the back of the draft room next to a gentleman named Lloyd Keaton, who was our West Coast scout at that time. And when we took Campbell, Lloyd leans over to me and he says, "That's a bad choice." I said, "Why do you say that?" And he says, "He can't play." I said, "Why don't you tell everybody that?" He said, "Nobody will listen to me." And Rich Campbell is a fine young man, but he wasn't a good quarterback. You make big mistakes by not taking people, too. So my point is, it's the key position. It's becoming more important than ever. And I think that's proven by the fact that now a quarterback has almost become an endangered species. You can't hit them in the head. You can't hit them in the knees. They're going to play a long time. And we've been very fortunate. After the 24 years of mediocrity that we went through in the 70s and 80s, we've had 28 years of two quarterbacks. One's in the Hall of Fame, the other one's headed there. I hope people realize how fortunate we have been to have this key position covered by not only great quarterbacks, but two fine young men that you're proud to have represent your organization. And if your football people aren't willing to look ahead and take a chance, as Ted told me when he used to make his draft choices, he said, Bob, we might have needs at, let's say, cornerback right now. But he said, I don't want to go out and draft 3 cornerbacks just because that's where we're weak. I've got my responsibility is to build the entire team and prepare not for just now, but what's going to lie ahead in the future. And the choice of those 2 quarterbacks of Brett and Aaron certainly prove that that's a sound way to go. So I just think you've got to be very patient and let them see what happens. If Aaron Rodgers gets hurt tomorrow, who knows what's going to happen? God forbid. Let's let this young man, let's let Jordan Love come in and see what he can do and grow in the sport and grow in the league and go from there.
There you go. That's Bob Harlan talking about the drafting of Jordan Love. And obviously we'll hear a little bit more from Bob coming up here a little bit later on in the program. Coming up at the top of the hour, Brian Noble is going to join me. And Brian and I spent many years together on the Packers Radio Network. Started out with when it was still the old style of Lambeau Field before it got renovated. In the road show out back after the games by the north end zone. Many of you fans came past. And then when it was renovated, then we were out front. We were out in front in the road show down where the players came in and out, and a lot of the fans tailgated and such, and we got a chance to spend time with you. And then Bob's vision was once Curly's was up and running, he wanted our show inside the atrium to keep fans there and to keep fans inside and, obviously, buying dinners and beverages and such. And we had such a great time doing the Packers postgame show on the Packers Radio Network. We had Irv Favre ended up joining us for a few years before Irv gave us his last words and then passed away. And we spent so much time together. And a lot of funny things happened over the years for Brian and I. But Brian obviously has his memories of Bob Harlan as well. So we're going to share some of that coming up. And we'll reconnect. We'll reconnect with my former partner. And it's been a while. We tried to get a hold of him. Actually, we tried to get a hold of him during when we were in Vegas for the Super Bowl. And Brian had a lot of stuff going on. He was busy. He couldn't come over. So we're going to finally touch base today and kind of reconnect with Brian Noble coming up here in a little bit. I want to remind you, it's coming up 2 weeks from yesterday. We're bringing our show to Green Bay for the first time during the week. We are so looking forward to it. We're going to be in Titletown, the official home of the Green and Gold Postgame Show. It's Home Field Pub and Social, kicking off March of Madness and the tournament. So come on over, get some good food. Doors open up at 9:30. Show begins at 10. We are so looking forward to getting up to Green Bay, and hopefully we get a few dignitaries to come over and say hi to us. But we're really looking forward to opening things up and kicking things off with Home Field Pub and Social, the new home for the Green and Gold Postgame Show. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break. Stay tuned. Brian Noble joining us on the program coming up next.
This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Wisconsin is headed to Purdue today. It's where they're going to take on the Boilermakers tomorrow in the regular season finale for both teams. If the Badgers win, they would either be the number 5 seed or the number 4 seed in the Big Ten tournament next week, depending on the outcome of some other games. If they lose, they'll be no worse than the number 6 seed. If the Badgers are going to have success tomorrow and in the postseason, Braden Carrington likely going to need to keep shooting it the way he has of late. After hitting 9 3-pointers, Washington last weekend went 4 for 8 against Maryland, shooting a team best 42% from deep for the season. Coach Greg Gard says Carrington's confidence is high.
Obviously, once he gets a couple to go in, then he's going to heat-check a couple maybe. But, his teammates know to look for him, and to find him. And he also has the confidence that he missed the first couple, and I gave him a little run, then brought him out and then put him back in. And you still got to have that confidence to keep shooting, keep letting it fly.
Going to be Wisconsin and Purdue tomorrow in West Lafayette. Tip is set for 3. Turning to the Bucks, they will face off against Utah tomorrow night at Fiserv Forum. Milwaukee's lost 4 straight, all by wide margins, and have started to see their playoff hopes fade.
Truck drivers, are you tired of your pay not matching your experience? At Schneider, our truck driver pay is designed so your years of service directly translate to higher earnings. Plus, longtime drivers qualify for larger sign-on bonuses and a larger selection of driving jobs. Pick from dry van, intermodal, tanker, and dedicated opportunities. Ready to be rewarded for your hard work and expertise? Find the right driving job for you at SchneiderJobs.com. That's SchneiderJobs.com.
One of the most influential people in bringing the Packers back to glory in the 1990s has passed away. Former team president Bob Harlan oversaw the rebirth of the franchise, including being the driving force behind the renovation of Lambeau Field. He passed away yesterday at the age of 89. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil. Grid.
Welcome, Bill Michaels Show. Passing the halfway point. 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Great to hear from Mark Murphy, former president of the Green Bay Packers. Wayne Laravey, voice of the Green Bay Packers. Got Mike Clemens coming up here. Bottom of the hour, he's going to be joining us. But it has been a long time since we have had a chance to chat, whether it's over the phone, text messages, or just together on the airwaves. My former partner and a former linebacker for the Green Bay Packers, Brian Noble, joining us. My friend, how you been?
I'm doing well, Billy. I agree with you. I was hoping that when we did talk again on the radio, it was something a little bit more positive.
Yeah, I know. I want to start because we've got so many stories and so many funny things. And when I said you were coming on, people started bringing up all kinds of different stuff that we've said on the air. But I want to bring you on specifically. You've got memories of Bob Harlan, the Packers organization and such. And when you heard of Bob's passing, I just wanted to get your thoughts.
Well, I think the bite that you played in the intro was very just. I was around when Bob took over the team, and it was almost like a positive thing in the sense that you knew Bob actually cared about the pride of the organization. Mm-hmm. I don't want to taint anybody before that by any stretch, but Bob was somebody that cared about what people thought. And when he took over, it was just, some of the things that he was doing, you could tell that the organization Bob had pride not in the organization. He had that sense of, we're going to, instead of being 4-12 or 8-8 every year, we're going to do this thing the right way, the way the rest of the league does it. And that the first thing he said, and I believe he said it publicly, I talked to him when he was doing, when he just started, was that he was going to bring in a football guy. He said, I'm tired of having to see, a business person or a community guy trying to run an organization from the football standpoint. And that's the way he kind of approached this whole thing, is that he wanted the Green Bay Packers to be just like anybody else in the league.
Yeah.
The old saying, Bobby and Billy, when I played, and everybody knows this, the threat around the league was, well, if you don't do well, we'll ship you off to Green Bay.
Right.
And Bob changed that whole perspective on things. I mean, he did make Green Bay what it is today, but just by what his moves specifically turned this organization into what it is today. Did you feel the change in the locker room? Definitely. Most definitely. The things that Bob had done, and like I said, I lived in Green Bay back then. Mm-hmm. I was one of like 3 guys that lived in Green Bay. So I saw Bob routinely walking through the facility, and it wasn't what it is today. The facility was much smaller then. And Bob always would walk the halls and just walk into people's office and sit down and talk to them. Mm-hmm. And he had that sense of
community. I mean, how many presidents or how many owners of the NFL, when you call the organization and ask for the president, how many presidents answer the phone?
Right.
You know, that was Bob, and that's how he did things. It was magical. Just, I mean, and the fact that it happened so fast, it's just crazy.
I remember, Bob, there was one time him and I met. I think it might have been at a training camp or at a practice, but it was on the practice field. And you and I had been together for a couple of years, and he came over, and he started walking towards me, and I went, "Oh God, what do we say?" You know, like just And he came over, and he was listening and complimented us, and said, "You know, you guys do a really good job playing off of one another. You make me laugh. You break it down." Bob was always the guy that would, because you don't get many people that come over and say, "Hey, thank you for what you do." You know, you get a lot of the complaints. Hey, this is wrong. That's wrong. Shut the hell up. You don't know what you're talking about. Stuff like that. Bob wasn't that guy. I mean, if there was something wrong, or maybe we got it wrong, or I got it wrong, or maybe the rumor was wrong, he'd say, "Hey, just to let you know," because he was a media guy, let you know about this. But he always came over and said, thanks. He said, "God, you make it so entertaining. And so many people talk about you guys and talk about, you know, the post-game show and want to be a part of it." And that's the reason his vision was for Curly's, for you and I to be together up there. He's like, that's where we want to put them on the stage, so the fans that talk to him about us could reach us and touch us and say hello to us. And I thought that was so cool that he wanted to include us in that at the time.
Yeah. But my story about Bob is, you know, obviously a little more personal from the standpoint in 1989, Billy, in training camp, I tore my knee up in the scrimmage. What we had is it rained that day that we were going to have our scrimmage outside. And Lindy decided to bring the scrimmage inside, and I was the first one to go to Lindy and say, you know, "Coach, we're going to go a full scrimmage on turf in here, and we haven't even been on turf yet." I said, "It's not a good idea." And he says, "Yeah, you know, just shut up and, you know, you go tackle and let me coach." And well, needless to say, shortly into the scrimmage, I tore my knee. Well, I got a diagnosis from the doctor at the time and said that I tore my knee up and I was going to need surgery, blah, 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 blah. So the next day I went and saw a different doctor, got a second opinion, and my knee wasn't torn up. I had stretched the ligament, but not torn it. I had an MRI and everything. And one guy was going to end my season and maybe my career having surgery the next day, but instead, so at the end of that season, Bob Harlan called me into his office, and you know, this is kind of telling you about what Bob's thought process was. He asked me why players had always left Green Bay to get medical care, you know, to have surgeries and such. They never got stuff done in Green Bay. And to me, I just told him what I had gone through, you know, and from that perspective, just from caring about the players a little bit more and trying to get more things done in Green Bay, he made a change. And that's what got Pat McKenzie into Green Bay.
Yeah.
And, you know, for me, I mean, that showed me a lot that he cared about what I thought. You know, he wasn't a guy that was so big that, you know, he's the president and this is the way I do things. He addressed it from a player's perspective that we want guys to stick in town, to be a part of our training and our medical staff and things of that nature. And it just, you know, when you got a guy that cares about you, and then, you know, like you were saying about how the organization changed, the mentality of the organization changed from medical stuff all the way through the people walking through the hallways.
Right.
It was different.
Yeah, I from that perspective, I knew Bob, but I knew Bob through the stories with you and with others, and Brett, and obviously Irv and such. And but I'll never forget when they won. Remember when Denver was in town, the Packers beat them, but during the game is when Poole with Arizona made that catch against the Vikings in the back of the end zone, and it reverberated because the Packers had just won the NFC North. And I think you and I got stuck outside. Remember, we were going through that catwalk and it got locked on us. We couldn't get to the show, and you're yanking on the door, and you're like, "Hey, wait a minute." And I'll never, for people that don't know, there's a catwalk that goes around the inside of Lambeau Field. And Brian's like, "We got a shortcut here. Let's go." So we went in this shortcut. We went through these doors. We came out, and we were supposed to get into the backside of Curly's, and the doors were locked. And the other door we just came out of locked, and we didn't have a pass key to get in. And Brian said, "Hold on a second." I held your briefcase, and you went, "Ah!" and ripped this door damn near off the hinges. And we ended up getting in. So Bob comes over, and Bob's, he's got the NFC North Championship hat, and they're passing out gear. And you looked at Bob, and you said, "Bob, hey, I didn't win a championship as a player, but if you guys win one now, does the broadcast guys get one?" And Bob paused for a minute. He looked at you and said, "Yeah, you do." Well, unfortunately, they didn't get one that year, but Bob he lived up to that word eventually, but it was just like, man, what a great guy.
Yeah, he was, like I said, really, it's so unique to have a guy like Bob, and I know it's a tough day to be talking about him, but I wish people would celebrate him more than I think he is everything to the Packers from the standpoint of where they are now. It's all Bob Harlan. He gets all the credit in the world for how he put this franchise back on the map, and he is just. I look at his family, Kevin, Mike, Brian, they're great people. His wife, they're just great people. And they're all Packers, I one year I got to do preseason with Kevin. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. and I asked Kevin about his dad. I says, "Is it kind of weird having your dad as the president and you do what you do?" And he says, "Brian," he says, "he still comes in and talks about he watches me all the time and tells me what I did."
Right.
And that was Bob.
Yeah.
He was just a person's person.
And Bob, it was the guy that kind of gave the blessing when Irv joined us. And because you were the one that started bringing Irv in, and they had to temper Irv a little bit, if you remember, to say, "Hey, Irv."
Well, we had to keep him out of the bar a little bit quicker than
right.
You had to get him out of there before he. And the crazy thing is, Bob listened.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what's scary is how like you're saying about every time I saw Bob, I was afraid that I had said something wrong or something, and I was going to get critiqued by him.
Right.
He would just, "Hey, Brian, how's it going?"
Right.
Great show. It's like,
yeah, I'll never forget. It was Christmas. Irv was joining us. And I tell this story all the time privately, but remember, you had I think it was the Diet Pepsi. I had the Sprite, and Irv always had the quote coffee in his coffee cup. Do you remember that story?
Yeah.
And we were for those that don't know, we're about ready to go on the air. There's just hundreds of people in Curly's. There's thousands of people down below listening. The Packers had just won this game. Irv's sitting there, and Irv had a tradition of getting, quote, coffee in his coffee. And we knew it was beer. And Paula was our girl who took care of us up there. And she had left to go back home for Christmas. And we had a new girl. And she goes, "I get it. Mr. Michaels, you get Sprite. Yeah, Mr. Noble, you get Diet Pepsi. And you get coffee." And Irv's gives her a wink like, "Yeah, I do." And he's signing everything. And all of a sudden, John Tyler's our engineer. And he goes, "Hey," and when Wayne Laravey starts doing the statistics, we know we've got 1 minute until airtime. And it gets down to 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 3, 2, and they point to me and you hear the music. And just before I said, "And the Green Bay Packers get a win," you hear, "Who the F put coffee in my coffee?" And then he looks at, and you're dying. You're out of control dying. And he looks at me and he goes, "O-S, blank. Was that on the air?" And then he did it again. And everybody paused. And the only person in the world that could get away with that was Irv. And the whole place then cracked up after that. It was one of the best moments in my career anyway. Hilarious. It was so much fun.
Yeah, we had some good times on that show. Yeah, we did.
The best story, and I get this all the time because you've told it so well, but the best story ever when you and I did the postgame show together. Here we go. was for those that don't know, when they renovated Lambeau Field, it was just renovated. They put us out front in the road show, and Brian and I did it was a late night game, and Mike Sherman was the head coach. And the week prior, who was the returner? Was it Goodson?
I don't remember. I was trying to think of the guy, the kids.
Yeah,
I couldn't remember.
They had a returner, and the week prior, he had caught a punt on like the 4-yard line, and Sherman ripped this guy. So then in this particular game the next week, and it's like a Sunday night or a Monday night game because it's dark as hell out and there's nobody left in the parking lot. We get to the second hour of the show and we're talking about this punt returner. He, instead of catching it, he lets one go on, and he's standing on the 10. He lets it go and they down it on the 2. And he rips this guy again. And Brian's going off. And I had noticed in the meantime, there was a car that had pulled into the parking lot. And there was a truck. This truck, yeah. And there's this truck off in the distance. And I see this guy eating.
And there's not a car in the parking lot.
Nobody.
The only one.
Nobody. And this guy's eating in his car. And I'm like, who's eating in his car watching us? He's watching the show. And Brian's going, and Sherman, God, what a dumbass. He ripped him last week, and then he's ripping this poor kid this week, and I can't believe it. And the lights come on. And I realized, oh, my God, it's Mike Sherman. So Brian's in mid-rant. I wrote a note, and I just passed it to Brian. I said, here comes Mike Sherman. That's him in the car. And you stopped talking. You started cracking up. And Mike Sherman, remember, he knocks on the door. He says, and he opens the door. Says, do you care if I come in? Brian's like, I guess so, coach. And he admitted you were right. He admitted you were right. It was great.
I went from 6'4", 260 to 3 feet 1. Saw him walking. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
What have I done?
That was the best.
He was sitting right there listening to the whole thing. And I was like, when he stepped out of that truck, my heart sunk. I was like, oh no.
It was great.
But yeah, I mean, he was very gracious. You know, what I was saying, and I wasn't crushing Mike. I was just saying, I'll bet he regrets that, letting that kid back out there, and it was a very critical situation. And he came in and said, you know, you were right, Brian. I should have put a veteran back there to catch it. And all he had to do was fair catch it. That's all he had to do.
Yeah.
And didn't do it. And
I wish I had that on tape. That was one of the best moments in radio history when that happened. That was fantastic. Pal, how is Cindy doing in the family?
Everybody's doing well.
Good.
You know, we like it. We're out in Vegas, and the warmth is good for my body. And you know, it's.
Are you still coaching high school football?
No, I gave that up. I got creamed on the sidelines one day. Actually, I had my back to the field, which I never should have done. And a kid came out to catch a pass and just plowed me. And that was my. I mean, it took me a while to recover from that. You know, I was getting old, almost 64 years old this year, and it's not something that I want to be doing.
Yeah,
taking a shot like that.
Yep, no doubt.
So
Well, Bud, give Cindy a hug. Tell everybody we miss them, love them, and hopefully we talk on better circumstances and reminisce real quick soon. I'm going to try to get out that way at some point. We'll go grab dinner and hang out for a couple of days. Okay?
Yeah, that'd be awesome, Billy.
I remember the last time I was there to your house, I was sitting down. Your daughter didn't come home because a bobcat was running through the neighborhood.
Yeah, mountain lion. Mountain
lion. Yeah. That was the time that I met Mike Tyson at the gas pump at the Shell station down at the bottom of the hill, too.
Yeah, I got some good Mike Tyson stories for you, too.
Oh, I bet you do. Good stuff. Brian, you take care. Tell everybody we said hi. I love your brother, and we'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right, Billy. You too, buddy.
Thanks, pal. Talk to you later. There you go. Brian Noble, linebacker for the Green Bay Packers, and was my partner for 7-8 years on the Green Bay Packers radio network on the Postgame show. It's just good stuff. Good stuff. We're going to take a break. We'll be back. More of the Bill Michaels Show next.
This is the Bill Michaels Show on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
Bill Michaels Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
Welcome back. Bill Michaels Show. That was fun. That was fun catching up with Brian Noble. That was fun. That was a good time. We had so much fun together. And what's really neat is you don't realize. I mean, obviously, it makes me feel old, and I'm sure it does with him as well. But it was when you get people that grew up, your generation, grew up in their formative years, everywhere from say 10 or 11 years old, all the way through their, early 20s. And they come up and say, that's all we did was listen to you and Brian. That's all we did. And Brian joined me once a week on Wednesday nights on my show on Sports Central at the time. And then obviously for, the preseason and the postseason and the entire season, 23, 26 straight weeks of Packers football. We had such a good time together. But yeah, it was always fun when Brian and I had a chance to kind of reminisce and catch up and do the shows together and such. So yeah, it was good stuff. Good to get him on for sure. Good. And obviously for the Bob Harlan side of things. So that was fantastic too. H7, go ahead.
Well, I asked you last night. Sorry to interrupt. When was the last time you had him on your show?
It's probably been 10 years. It's probably been 10 years.
I'm sitting here listening. This is like Henley and Glenn Fry getting back together in the early 90s or something. Like it's just cool to be able to listen to you guys, because it's not like you chit chat on the show all the time.
No,
like Clemens is great, but Clemens is on all the time. You guys did shows forever. I know that postgame show means a lot to a lot of people, so it's cool to be able to do that. Sad circumstance, but some great stories, great memories.
The funny thing is, Brian and I was the play-by-play guy, and Brian was my color guy for back when the Milwaukee Mustangs were around. Do you remember the arena team?
Yeah, that's
Milwaukee
right.
had. I was the television guy, and Brian was the play-by-play guy, and which was it was such a joy to do. But you'd think flying all over the country for arena games. It's not like flying for the NFL. I mean, they would put us. Oh my God, no! First of all, we'd fly out day of and fly back night of, so they didn't have to fork over for a hotel room. So you're on a budget. I mean, you're on a thin shoestring thin budget. I remember one time they flew us to Grand Rapids, and we were taking on the Grand Rapids Rhinos or something like that. And I can't remember what the hell they were, whatever they were named. And they put us on a plane, and Brian and I Brian had come down from Green Bay to meet me in Milwaukee. We were going to fly to Milwaukee, and we were in the main concourse. I think it's the middle one, whatever it is, D or C, I think it's C. And they said, "Oh, okay, your plane's down here." We said, "Okay." We started walking. We're like, "We can't find it. Where's our gate?" And they said, "No, you got to go downstairs." Oh, okay. So we go downstairs. So we know it's not going to be a big jet. And there's this little plane, this 10-seater, of which there was a couple of guys from the team, Brian and myself, and then like two businessmen. And it's a single row. So you walk on the plane, and there's a row, a little aisleway, and you got to walk sideways because we're so tall. It's a tiny little plane. And then there's the seats, and each seat is behind the other. And it is the best I could tell you would be like going back in the day and watching an old MASH, TV show with the old canvas seats, and they're green and the seatbelts are frayed. And it was a hunk of crap. It was just a twin prop, and I'll never forget flying over and back. And I don't like flying anyway. And Brian he kept tapping me on the head. "You can't take this. I'm getting claustrophobic. I'm not a flyer anyway." And yeah, Brian he was just laughing the whole trip. And every time we'd hit turbulence, because those things bounce. And you wouldn't get like a word out of me, but you'd get noises. And every time something would come out of me, he was just like, you just heard him. He just crack up. And I was big back then. I was pushing 380, 400 pounds, somewhere in there. And he kept saying, "Your big ass is taking us down. Your big ass is taking us down," And we had so much fun doing the game. But there was one time we did the game, and there was a big kid, big lineman. He was an offensive lineman at the University of Cincinnati, and the ball was tipped in the air. And it was a pass play, and the ball was tipped in the air, and this kid caught it, and he starts running, and he looked like a boulder going downhill with just a lot of moss hanging on to him. There was just these little guys hanging on to him, and they were driving him towards now in Arena League, you don't have glass up, but you have the boards. So they push this guy, this big PHAT fat guy, this big offensive lineman, and he goes tumbling into the front row, just ass over elbows, feet are in the air, and this little old lady and this little old man are the two sitting there, and she's got this ghastly look on her face like, "Oh," screaming. And this guy gets up and he spikes the ball, because he made the catch and picked up the first down. He spikes the ball, and the ball blows up everywhere. I'm like, "What?" And I'm on the air. I'm like, what just happened? What is that? And they zoom in on it. So he fumbled the ball out of bounds. When he went over the board, he dropped the ball. And he wanted to act like he still had it, so he grabbed onto something. It was the woman's brown leather purse. She had her purse sitting underneath her seat. And when he went to, the football was still in the seats, he grabbed her purse and spiked her purse. And I mean, crap was everywhere. There were chiclets and gum and keys and makeup and this poor old woman, her whole stuff was all over the field. And I said, "Have you ever seen anything like that before, Brian?" And all I heard was, and he couldn't breathe. He yells, "Call an ambulance. I can't breathe." And he was laughing so hard. It was so funny. And I wish I still had some of those moments on videotape at this point in time, because I'd play them back. But it was the funniest thing I think I'd ever seen. It was just hilarious. This guy, this big guy, I can't remember the guy's name. He spiked the football, and it was this woman's purse, and it went everywhere. And even the defenders were cracking up. They were like on one knee. They were laughing. And the guys over there trying to, this big lineman is now scooping up makeup, and he's scooping up a compact that broke all over the field. And they got to bring, I think the glass broke and the mirror broke in, and they got to bring it out and kind of sweep it up to get the glass off the field. It was hilarious. It was hilarious. So it was good stuff. Let's do this. We'll get out of that memory phase and we'll get into another one. Mike Clemens is going to join us coming up next. Obviously, Mike, a long time covering the Green Bay Packers, and Mike's going to have some memories. Mike and I will reminisce as well. All of our guests, including Brian and Mike and everybody, join us on the big Schneider Orange Hotline. Schneider hiring drivers right now. Go to schneiderjobs.com. That's schneiderjobs.com. Call them 844-PRIDE, or again, go to schneiderjobs.com. Get a hold of a recruiter, type in your zip code, and see if they can't find you a driving gig in your area. More of the Bill Michaels Show coming up next.
This is the Bill Michaels Show on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
Bill Michaels will resume in 5 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 4 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
Let me ask you this. When was the last time you had a chance to talk to Bob?
You know, Bob was always a good conversation. I do remember one time I met with him and sat down and talked about the whole thing and recorded it at his favorite breakfast place, the Bay Inn, which I believe is where Mike Clemens stays when he's in Green Bay, and where Dick Schaap stayed when he wrote Instant Replay with Jerry Kramer. So, but Bob, you know, we had a long conversation that day. That had to be, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago.
Speaking of that, Bay Motel always brings you our good friend Mike Clemens, the Bay Motel in Green Bay and the family restaurant right next door. BayMotelGreenBay.com. Quiet, cozy, comfortable, perfect for a family stay in the restaurant. Home-style cooking 7 days a week. Bob loved to eat there. Dick Schaap, and that's when he sat down with Jerry Kramer and then Mike Clemens. And the famous legends continue to roll through there. The BayMotelGreenBay.com and the Bay Family Restaurant right next door. Call them 920-494-3441, 920-494-3441. And they have it. Let's bring in our guy, Mike Clemens. Michael, how you doing, pal?
Man, I can't believe the calls that you're getting today, too. Like the listener, Joe from Eau Claire, who calls in. He says, you know, I write Bob Harlan a letter like, this new quarterback, Don Mikowski, we're in number 5. My gosh, that's Paul Horning. You know, really? Mm-hmm. That's not retired? And Bob Harlan tracks down the guy's number and calls him and has a 15-minute conversation and gets input from him. And I've got 6 or 7 stories to add for you. I've been on the phone this morning, you know, calling friends, you know, former workers there, colleagues, people still, you know, in the building. And like John Dodds, you know, you've had him on the show, right? John is an attorney in Milwaukee, but has been a statistician for Packers, for still with Marquette and all that. John talked about how his parents lived in Wauwatosa, and this new young couple, the Harlans, move across the street. So they went to, you know, welcome the couple to the neighborhood, and Mr. Dodds, his dad, you know, introduces himself to Bob and says, yeah, I know who you are. Yeah, because I grew up in Des Moines, and you were on our high school basketball team. When I was 6th grade, I wrote a sports story on you when you were in your senior years. About, like, what? How does a guy remember this?
Right.
That's the way he was. The thing is, he was so smart. He had such a terrific memory, but he didn't act like the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah.
You know, he shared that information and just story after story like that. And then I talked to another guy today, who we talked to, Adam, out in San Francisco. I said, give me an example. He says, I'll give you a great example. 23-year-old intern, just hired to the staff. And I'm invited to a conference room meeting with Bob Harlan. Now, this is like 2004, 2000. You know, he's the guy. He's the guy that brought Ron Wolf and Brett Favre and all that stuff to Green Bay. And he says, so I get to see that, and he's there, and they're having the meeting, and all the department heads, and they're talking. It goes on for about an hour and a half, and I'm taking notes. He said, I go back to my little cubicle, right, way in the back, and there's Mr. Harlan coming around the corner like, uh-oh, what did I do, right? And he said to him, hey, I want to ask you something. Ask who he is, what he does, where he's from. What did you think of the meeting? In a very serious tone. Well, and so he told him. He told him what some of the things were discussed, some of the ideas, what he thought would work, and grilled him. Because you know what? He wanted feedback.
Yeah.
He wanted fresh ideas. And I said, you know what else he's doing? He's evaluating you.
He's trying to see if the kid was paying attention.
Right.
That's the way the guy worked.
Right. Yeah, there was so much. And, you and I have talked over the years about obviously his impact. And I always said that, he was a media guy that ended up being the president of the Green Bay Packers. So he always understood us and always appreciated good content. He always appreciated fair, I think, more so than anything. Like I said before, and I'll say it again, he always said, hey, if it's not personal, say what you want. Everybody's got an opinion and I just want to hear them. And that was what I respected so much about him, was he never got in the way. He always, and I said this last night when I did my piece, Bob was a guy that was brilliantly smart because he knew his place. And that's not diminishing him. That is praising him, because he knew what he was good at. He knew what he wasn't good at. And what he wasn't good at, he wanted to be better at, or hire the people that were good at that. And that's what made him so good. He recognized people's strengths and weaknesses.
So Bob is born in Des Moines, Iowa, grows up there, and becomes a student at Marquette. And by the time he gets around to graduating, around 59 or so, early 60s, he becomes the sports information director, the young head PR guy of the sports teams. And he loved football, and he was heartbroken that Marquette was giving up the football program and focusing on basketball just as he takes over. So he's there for 3 or 4 years. He's over at the Dodds family during the 62 championship when the Packers beat the Giants in New York, and what Jerry Kramer says were the best, maybe the best team he was on during the Lombardi era. And he turns to those folks in Tulsa and says, I'd love to work for the Packers someday. So his next job is part of the PR staff of the St. Louis Cardinals, the baseball team. And, how hot they were in the 60s, right? Yeah. The last time I had a chance to talk to Bob was 3 or 4 years ago. He came down to practice during training camp, and I waved him over by that door where the players come out to get a little bit in the shade. I said, can I ask you a question? What was Bob Gibson like? Have you heard of Bob Gibson, the fastball pitcher that the Cardinals had in the 60s? Euchre would catch him. Because, when I'm 6 or 7, I got his card, and I just thought, the world of the guy. Bob Harlan was around him. And Costas had recently done a thing that, Bob Gibson was kind of a jerk. Like when he was on the mound throwing that heat, he was, he hated opposing batters. But he was like nasty to his teammates, before the game and after the game. And Bob Harlan, he lit up and he goes, hey, you're absolutely right, Mike. He says, listen, we're going to the World Series, and this is a problem. We've got to. This guy's, loved by the fans, and the media want to know more. And he's turning down all these interviews. And I sort of had to figure out a way to build that bridge, between him and the manager. You don't want to interfere, but no, he's,
right.
Gibby, had his moves, but he learned that stuff early on about, you've got to do to think of the fans all the time.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's what he did. And that's why when you hear the stories that he gave somebody tickets, or he called them back, or he sent them a letter, or, I go back to the days when they were going for the Brown County tax, and he was, because we were covering the team and I worked with the team, we went with him door to door, and we were recording, what people were saying. And he'd walk up to a door, and some people would say, oh my God, it's Bob Harlan, and they'd love it and everything. And then there was others that were mad. Like, I'm not paying a tax. I'm not going to do this. Bob was genuinely worried about all of that, but all the fans, he listened to everybody, and he always had a friendly handout to say, hey, if you've got something to say it. I want to get all the information, but that was just kind of Bob's way. I know he took Brett under his wing. I know he really kind of talked to Aaron quite a bit. Aaron gives him a lot of praise as well since his passing. So Bob just had that impact on people, might be the best way to put it.
When Bob was out campaigning, and you were part of that as part of the flagship, and the network then in the early 2000s. First of all, give the guy I thought Lambeau Field was iconic the way it was.
Right.
They got a 30-year waiting list. What's the change? No, and earlier today you talked about how Jerry Jones said, "What are they doing up there in Green Bay? Let's take a look at this Titletown thing, right?"
Right.
And then Jerry, built the Star in Fresno, Texas. There isn't a room by their stadium, but he built his own Cowboys Titletown and headquarters and practice field like that. And it sparked a memory today. We've talked about how Mark Murphy in his ideas for Titletown. He went and saw what Bob Kraft was doing with the Patriots Village and other places like that, or what Wrigley was doing in Wrigleyville in Chicago. And Bob Harlan told me, because I had seen this too. I got an assignment in Washington, D.C. in the 90s to work for a week for CBS covering a Senate hearing. And then the producer said, hey, let's go see an Orioles game. We get some seats. We're in the 7th row right by an home plate. And Jim McKay sitting in front of us. I didn't realize he was an owner of the Orioles. But that was the Cal Ripken days. And remember those signs, those 4 numbers about, his streak, his winning streak? That was Camden Yards with the retail area right there behind the plate with those bricks. Bob Harlan was intrigued by that, went to Baltimore, and that's where he got his vision to say, this is what we could do with Lambeau Field, like Camden Yards. Put a retail area in it, put the atrium on there. That's where these visions come from, and to come up with that stuff. And that was not an easy sell, like you've talked about earlier. Everybody thinks, big deal. So you hire Ron Wolf, and he gets Brett Favre, and then you get Reggie White and Mike Holmgren. Those are not easy decisions. Think about it, man.
Right.
I mean, and it's like, he takes, after working for the Packers for about 15, 20 years, and he gets the president's job. The Packers were run by the board, okay? The board. I was listening to you today. I had these flashbacks. On draft day, some of those guys would be hanging around, like in the press room or post game from the board.
Yep.
That doesn't. The guys that just hired him as president and CEO said, we're going to change this now. This is 24 years of mediocrity, and you guys stick to revenue and ideas and community support, but we're going to get a football guy in here, and he's going to make the football decisions. And that's Ron Wolf. And then when Ron Wolf says there's a third-string kid in Atlanta named Favre, sitting on the bench for the Falcons, or Bill Parcells turned us down. I'm going after this quarterback coach for the 49ers named Holmgren. I mean, those aren't easy decisions. You have no idea if this is going to work out, but you hire good people. You trust it's going to work out. And those are the advancements that he made along the way.
Mike, real quick, we got breaking news. Rashawn Gary has posted, and so did Tom Pelissero, but the Packers and Rashawn Gary have parted ways. He was due $19.5 million this year, no guaranteed money. So the Packers have let him go. He announced on his Twitter account that his time in Green Bay is over. He says, now on to my next stop. Nowhere near done yet. All 6'5", 275, can't wait. The opportunity to represent Green Bay and the Packers Nation across the country and around the world is something I will never forget.
You know what's interesting about this is I was just thinking about this week. When you see these other teams that are releasing players and either saying we're going to trade him or, but we're going to let him go, like Diggs, being let go from the Diggs the other day. And you can name a half of those. That doesn't happen often in Green Bay. This is unique.
Yep.
This is unique. And maybe Rashawn wants to move on. But, that means that they know that Van Ness is there, and they're waiting for and Goody, seemed to imply like, hey, we don't know where Micah Parsons is going to be in September coming back from an ACL. And so, we'll see about Rashawn coming back. But obviously, he was not going to take the haircut necessary to help out with that salary cap. So another tough decision right there by the Green Bay Packers, and we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, no doubt. Mike, you want to stick around for one more segment?
You bet.
Let's do this. Mike Clemens joining us on the hotline. Breaking news is that the Packers and Rashawn Gary have indeed parted ways. Rashawn Gary making the announcement on his account. This portion of the program brought to you by our friends at Curly's Waterfront Sports Bar and Grill. It's a Fish Fry Friday at Curly's. And if you're out and about and you want to check out Lake Country, that's a great place to go. Always a really good place to go. And if by chance you want to stop in and say hi to Ryan and the gang, tonight, Fish Fry Friday. And as a matter of fact, one of the local stations in Milwaukee is trying to get votes for the best fish fry. They've got that posted on their social media page on Facebook and Instagram as well. But it's Friday, and you know what that means. It means that the happy hour starts 3 to 6. They've got the garlic Dijon catch of the day with the bang bang shrimp, walleye, bluegill, perch, cod, fish, taco, shrimp, all that kind of good stuff over there. Curly's Waterfront Sports Bar and Grill. Again, Curly's Waterfront Sports Bar and Grill, Lakeview Boulevard in Pewaukee. Rashawn Gary making the announcement. He is no longer a Green Bay Packer. They have cut him loose to save the money, and we'll talk about it more with Mike Clemens when we come back. More next.
Covering Wisconsin sports like a blanket. This is the Bill Michaels Show on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
Bill Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
I think they pay as they go. So if there's a free agent that they want to sign, or if there's one of their own that's going to cost them some money, then they clear the space. You know, they needed McKinney's money, someone's money, to get under the salary cap because they're over it right now. I assume they're going to, you know, make some moves, possibly cutting Elton Jenkins, possibly cutting Rashawn Gary, which would clear about $30 million worth of cap space. Then they're going to have to figure out how to sign whichever ones they can or that they want to sign. I think they figured that Quay Walker is gone. You know, the other guys, I think they're probably in on it, but they'll only go to a certain point. So I think it all kind of depends on how things flow through free agency, and they'll tap whoever they need to tap to get that money.
That's exactly what they did. If you're just tuning in, the breaking news moments ago, Rashawn Gary has been told he's going to be let go by the Green Bay Packers. He was due $19.5 million this upcoming season, and the Packers have parted ways with him. He put a message up on Twitter, on X, But they're going to save, I think they're going to save about close to 19, 20 million bucks in addition. And they've got more to do. They've already been cap compliant, but you got to figure when free agency starts on Monday, maybe the Packers are kind of clearing some space to make a move or two. And you got to wonder what they're going to do now with the edge rush position. Are they comfortable with Lucas Van Ness? And maybe if they bring back Engelbari or if they get into the mix for somebody else. But nevertheless, Rashawn Gary, no more. Mike Clemens joining us on the hotline. And Mike, it's interesting because the Packers, we heard when we were at Combine, all we kept hearing was the Packers are going to be aggressive. Rumor has it they're going to be aggressive. Well, they're cutting some space and making room right now. So it's going to be interesting to see what they ultimately do.
Well, Rashawn feels he's worth it. He's not going to take a cut if that was offered. I always kind of wondered in the back of my mind, the spotlight just totally shifted and changed to Micah Parsons is, obviously one of the leaders, not only of the defense, but as a team when they brought him on. I mean, the spotlight was on him. And, how did that affect Rashawn Gary? I don't know. But in the meantime, yeah, it's partly a money thing. It's a productivity thing. And J.J. Enagbari is going to be a free agent too, but he had more production when it came to getting tackled for losses and in the backfield in the second half of the season than Rashawn did. And don't forget about Baron Sorrell coming on toward the end of the season.
Yeah,
as another option that they can develop and bring in there to help out, Micah Parsons and company and Lucas Van Ness and, getting to the quarterback.
Yep, no doubt. Anything, I know we only got a couple minutes here, but as we wrap up this hour talking about Bob Harlan, obviously the breaking news of Rashawn Gary, anything else that you want to relay before we move out of here?
We're in Cincinnati. It's about 2006. They're playing the Bengals. I think it was an exhibition game. And on that north end of that stadium down there where the Bengals play, there's this one escalator it's exposed. It's huge, but it goes way up. And Bob used to like to walk the stadiums and see what the fans were doing, right? And then he goes up the escalator and he's with one of his assistants, and they just happen to be in front of me. And as we get about halfway up, the vertigo was setting in, like, oh my God, this thing is weird. It's open air. And he turns back to his assistant and says, man, we would never do this in Green Bay. Can you imagine with our fans? Oh, I
know, right?
And he's basically saying, do you know how drunk our fans are? I mean, he was always thinking about the fans. Always thinking about the fans. And that's why that guy was so successful. And that's why all these tributes are pouring in today as to how much they appreciate what Bob Harlan did for the franchise. And as passing his last press conference, handing the baton to Mark Murphy, I've got that somewhere on tape where they said, hey, what do you think about the league getting into this streaming stuff and more pay-per-view? And he said, I'll tell you what, we play all the commercials. He says, if Joe Sixpack has to pay to watch a football game on Sunday, that's going to be a sad day for the NFL. That was 2008.
Yep, and it's come to fruition, unfortunately.
Sure has.
Maybe that's why he just said, you know what, can't take it anymore. I'm out. But nevertheless, great stuff all day long. Mike, appreciate it, pal. We will talk again soon, okay?
Thank you, Bill.
All right, bud. There you go. On a Friday, Mike Clemens, always brought to you by the Bay Motel in Green Bay. Bay Motel, quiet, cozy, comfortable, and just a mile from Lambeau Field. Always good to kind of pick the brain of Mike Clemens. Yeah, if you're tuning us in, the Packers have parted ways with Rashawn Gary, saving $19.5 million. The edge rusher posting on X saying, it's been a pleasure, but I am moving on. So we've got another hour yet to go. Don't go anywhere. More of the Bill Michaels Show coming up right after this.
This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Wisconsin is headed to Purdue today. It's where they're going to take on the Boilermakers tomorrow in the regular season finale for both teams. If the Badgers win, they would either be the number 5 seed or the number 4 seed in the Big Ten tournament next week, depending on the outcome of some other games. If they lose, they'll be no worse than the number 6 seed. If the Badgers are going to have success tomorrow and in the postseason, Braden Carrington likely going to need to keep shooting it the way he has of late. After hitting 9 3-pointers, Washington last weekend went 4 for 8 against Maryland, shooting a team best 42% from deep for the season. Coach Greg Gard says Carrington's confidence is high.
Obviously, once he gets a couple to go in, then he's going to heat check a couple maybe. But, his teammates know to look for him, and to find him. And he also has the confidence that he missed the first couple, and I gave him a little run, then brought him out and then put him back in. And you still got to have that confidence to keep shooting, keep letting it fly.
Going to be Wisconsin and Purdue tomorrow in West Lafayette. Tip is set for 3. Turning the Bucks, they will face off against Utah tomorrow night at Fiserv Forum. Milwaukee's lost 4 straight, all by wide margins, and have started to see their playoff hopes fade.
Truck drivers, no matter where you want to take your career in 2026, Schneider has an opportunity for you. Our huge selection of driving jobs means you can get the home time that suits your schedule. Choose from daily, weekly, monthly, or sometime in between. Looking for more reliability on the road? Check out our new dedicated and regional van truckload opportunities. Don't miss out. Find your perfect driving job today at SchneiderJobs.com. That's SchneiderJobs.com.
One of the most influential people in bringing the Packers back to glory in the 1990s has passed away. Former team president Bob Harlan oversaw the rebirth of the franchise, including being the driving force behind the renovation of Lambeau Field. He passed away yesterday at the age of 89. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil. Grid.
Welcome in. Final hour of the Bill Michaels Show. On this Friday edition, if you're just tuning us in, Rashawn Gary is cut loose by the Green Bay Packers. He was due $19.5 million this upcoming season, and they said, nah, not going to pay that. And whether they offered him a pay cut or he just didn't want to take it, regardless, the two sides did not come to any kind of agreement, and thus Rashawn Gary is now on the open market. Is that the total number they saved, Grant, by any chance? Do you know? Did they save the $19.5 million?
I would assume there's probably a couple of dead. I would think it's about that number. I'll try to hammer that down.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a misleading number. Because they can save a lot of money cutting Jenkins and Gary.
Between Gary and Jenkins, I think it came to like $35 million, something like that. That if they cut those two loose, that they would save a giant chunk of change, just those two alone. So I'm kind of wondering where that stands. By the way, as far as we know, Elton Jenkins is still on the roster. So that has not come to pass.
So I was messaging you when you were chatting with Mike, and I was thinking about what Tom Silverstein said yesterday, because they got cap compliant with McKinney. That was the one move they needed to make. They're under the cap. So the Packers could have done nothing the rest of the offseason and been fine. And what Tom said is he thinks, and I played this cut, they're going to pay as they go, right? I was reading Justice Mosqueda, who was writing something similar yesterday. It's like, if they start cutting Gary or Jenkins, it might give us a little bit of an idea that they're preparing or they're going to try to add somebody. Because it's not like Gary had a huge bonus due next week.
Right.
It's very similar to Jair in that they could cut him the week before the season if they wanted to hold out for a trade, or you know what I mean, if they maybe thought about keeping him. So to me, this gives me a little bit more optimism that hopefully they're going to go after some guys next week. Doesn't guarantee it, but it gives us reason to think that, maybe they could.
They saved, it looks like if you go with over the cap, they saved $17.04 million. If they would have cut them post June 1st, maybe a couple million difference, but yeah, they cut them saving. It looks like, I don't know how to read this. I don't know if this is, I think maybe they saved 10.9. I can't read this, how they've got this written. So his base salary was 18 with the prorated signing bonus of 8.5. And then the roster bonus and all that kind of stuff, workout bonus. The total number was $28 million. Oh, I see what it is. The money saved was $10.9 million. So they saved $10.9 million. So there you go. They have to pay him the 17.4. They saved $10.9 million out of that, I guess is what they're saying. So there you go. That's what they end up saving. If I'm reading this correctly, otherwise I'm a complete idiot. Maybe it's the opposite. But nevertheless, and then you've got Elton Jenkins, who they would say, Elton Jenkins. I remember they would save a lot. So I think Elton Jenkins, they would save almost $20 million. So between the two, if I remember correctly, they would save like $30 million, and I think that's what it comes out to. So yeah, I'm kind of reading this correctly. Okay, I'm right. But yeah, that's what's on the block, so to speak. Who else we talked about? Trying to look and see what amount of money would be saved. Zach Thomas, Xavier McKinney, they redid that deal. So yeah, Xavier McKinney, they pushed that back. Xavier McKinney's base salary this year goes down to $1.2 million because they prorated some of that stuff into a signing bonus. So they pay him kind of up front, but it's $1.2 million is only what Xavier McKinney's going to cost on the cap this year.
I wouldn't be surprised if they extend him in the next year. He's only 27.
Yeah.
Unlike Jenkins and Gary, and I don't know how old Gary is. Jenkins is a little bit older, but McKinney's also at a position where he'll probably age a little bit better, and he's not coming off a crazy injury like Elton Jenkins is. Remember, Jenkins has blown his knee and broke his leg last year now, so he's beaten up. And it was interesting to hear Tom Silverstein talk about how he'd want him back. I hadn't heard an analyst or a writer on this show or my show talk about that, so I'm open-minded to it, but that's a little bit more of a daunting endeavor, a little riskier for a lineman than it would be for, say, a safety.
So, yeah, the dead money is 17.042 for Rashawn Gary that he gets paid right now to walk out the door. That's not a bad payday as you walk out the door. And then they save 10.9 million, and then they now stand at almost 13 million under the cap at 12.8 with even more restructuring to go. And the other big one is going to be Elton Jenkins, I would assume, where the dead cap money is 4.8 and they're going to save the 19.5. So from where they are now at what I say, 13 million under, they'll be closer to 33 million, almost 34 million, if they do indeed cut Elton Jenkins loose too. And then kind of go from there. So we'll see. We'll see what they end up doing. Like you said, they're kind of making that flexibility as we're just about upon free agency, which is next Monday, by the way, for those that didn't know. And going back to what Tom Silverstein said, the Packers kind of looking at deals that could be upcoming, and they kind of quote pay as they go. So we'll see what it is they actually decide to do. But yeah, Rashawn Gary no longer, and he has now been cut loose. Now, when you look at the roster, and you look at where the Packers are in all of this, they're thin on the outside edge rusher till you get Micah Parsons back. And even then, there's no guarantee that your edge rush is going to be good. So when you look at the edge, you got Micah Parsons, Kingsley Enagbare, who is a free agent, whether or not they bring him back. If you don't bring him back, you now have Lucas Van Ness, Barron Sorrell, Brenton Cox Jr. Those are your main guys. You still have Colin Oliver. He was the 5th round draft choice from last year. Barron Sorrell, remember, was your 4th round draft choice. But everybody was kind of rooting for Sorrell because he was that third day guy, and he got the big hug from the commissioner. It was such a cool story. So whether or not they believe Barron Sorrell is ready to kind of step up, or they're going to go out and get somebody else. But all you have right now until Micah Parsons comes back is Lucas Van Ness, Brenton Cox Jr., Barron Sorrell, and then Colin Oliver. That's your outside edge rushers right now. Now, we know Van Ness played better down the stretch, but that's that. And here's the other thing. You're banking on Micah coming back and being Micah. You don't know. You don't know until he's back. You don't know how he's going to be. So I would assume, because edge rushers are relatively heavy in the draft, maybe they're just banking on going after it through the draft. But we'll wait and see. Wait and see. Not shocked by this, by the way. Not shocked at all. And, again, somebody had said an email, and this is from Matt, who says they'll probably pick one up early on in the draft. But remember, they don't have a first-round draft choice. They only have 8 picks. It's not like they're going to, it wouldn't surprise me if maybe they go back in the second or third round and get some additional picks, but they only have 8 picks, and they don't have a first-rounder. Now, people are, I can't believe they don't have a first round. Well, you picked up a first-round draft choice in Micah Parsons, who, is massive. That's a massive get. But, yeah, not to have the first-rounder and then to have eight picks this year. Wisco family says, I'd rather see Colin Oliver out there than Rashawn Gary. No big deal on whoever else is in that room. Gary wasn't getting the job done anyway. He was a pressure guy that wasn't getting sacks. He was a guy that was creating pressures. He just had lost his step and he wasn't getting to the quarterback as he was earlier in his career. So, but that, that's why he became expendable. And, Goose Egg says, well, he was too slow to catch Caleb Williams. Not many people are catching Caleb Williams, just so you know. Just so you know. What else do we have? Somebody said, Pac Fan says that now Rashawn Gary has deleted that post. Well, everybody's got it. So everybody from Tom Pelissero to Adam Schefter to whomever, everybody's got it, the post from Rashawn Gary. And he posted, by the way, on his page, said, when I got the call in 2019, it was one of the greatest moments in my life, and it always will be. The opportunity to represent Green Bay and the Packers Nation across the country and around the world is something I'm never going to forget. Like all chapters in life, this one has come to an end. I want to thank everyone who supported me and my family throughout the years. The love, the energy, and the memories mean more than words can explain. On to my next stop. Now, nowhere near done yet. All 6'5", 275. Can't wait. Signed by Rashawn Bain Gary. So Rashawn Gary gone. Do we? Okay, wait a minute here.
Tom Pelissero. Rashawn Gary has not yet been traded or released. All options are on the table, but obviously Gary does not expect to return.
Right.
Well, I
mean, this post came off of his official page, by the way.
Yeah, this is from the player. This is from the Packers.
Yeah, this is from Rashawn Gary.
You get a lot of this. The Packers probably aren't going to officially release him. I mean, they could plan to do it at the beginning of the league year, but that communication's been, another. And I lost this in the not the Tom Pelissero, but Mike Clemens appearance and the Rashawn Gary news. Tom Pelissero also sharing a post from Taylor Decker, who's the Lions left tackle. He requested his release after his contract talks broke down. Bill, I first started talking about this on my show the other night. You have the Lions, the Packers, and the Bears all with massive O-line questions this offseason. And I think the team that gets it right or gets it the most right is going to be the team that not necessarily will win the division, but I think that's so important because the Bears lost their center, their left tackle, Packers losing a couple guys, Lions losing a couple of guys, and their offensive line wasn't good last year. It's a huge story.
And the Bears losing DJ Moore in the trade. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's another piece off of that offensive line or off of that offense. But I agree with you. And don't forget, the Lions really never recovered from losing Ragnow last year, their center who retired, and then they tried to bring him back and he failed the physical. So that offensive line is a lot different now than it was a couple of years ago when they were on that 14-15 win run. So that, and we know the play calling changed after Ben Johnson left. So, and what Wayne Laravey said earlier holds true that, the Lions kind of felt like they bottomed out last year. Like, man, this was nowhere near what they thought it was going to be and how bad things got after Ben Johnson and Allen both left, offensive and defensive coordinators. They just never recovered from that and losing a few players. And now we talked about Anzalone possibly being out on the block as well. There's some change going on right now in the NFC North, without a doubt. And the Packers are a part of it. Now it's what they fortify this team with after the fact. We'll have to wait and see. Let's do this. It's continuing on. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. Stay tuned. We got a whole lot more of the Bill Michaels Show. Coming up right after this is portion of it brought to you by our friends at Potawatomi. Go to Potawatomi.com. And if you are getting ready to head anywhere, if you're not going to join us in Green Bay, okay, if you're not going to join us in Green Bay at Home Field Pub and Grill, then for the March Madness, you got to get yourself a seat. Reserve it now. Get yourself a seat down there at Potawatomi at the Sportsbook. It's a spectacular place to go and watch all of the games on that giant, massive screen that they have down there. Go to Potawatomi.com. That's Potawatomi.com. The gaming, sportsbook, the restaurants, the bars, the music, they got it thumping upstairs. Both live music and the DJs are thumping. The hotel next door. Potawatomi's got it all under one roof. Go to Potawatomi.com.
Covering Wisconsin sports like a blanket. This is the Bill Michaels Show on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
Bill Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
If there's anything that any president takes from the legacy of Bob Harlan, it's that, hey, never forget about the fans because they're what makes this whole thing great.
Especially, with an organization as unique as the Packers. We're owned by the fans, and you need to treat them with respect. Now, that's not to say there were sometimes you get calls like, okay, well, we're on a losing streak, not doing well, and they're sharing their opinions. Now, Bob, he was such a gentleman, and talk about him as a person and what a great person he was, and so positive, and just always had time for everybody.
When I played, and everybody knows this, the threat around the league was, well, if you don't do well, we'll ship you off to Green Bay.
Right.
And Bob changed that whole perspective on things. I mean, he did make Green Bay what it is today, but just by what his moves specifically turned this organization into what it is today.
Did you feel the change in the locker room?
Most definitely. I lived in Green Bay back then. I was one of like 3 guys. So I saw Bob routinely walking through the facility, and it wasn't what it is today. Bob always would walk the halls and just walk into people's office and sit down and talk to them. He had that sense of community. I mean, how many presidents or how many owners of the NFL, when you call the organization and ask for the president, how many presidents answer the phone? You know, that was Bob, and that's how he did things. It was magical. Just the fact that it happened so fast, it's just crazy.
By the time 1989 rolled around, when they were looking for a new president and CEO, Bob had done everything in that building. And again, it was a small pillbox of a building at the corner of Ridge Road and Lombardi Avenue, but nonetheless, he had done the whole thing, and he was a perfect choice. It was my first NFL game. It was a preseason game. I was 23 years old, just had gotten the job as the play-by-play voice of the Chiefs. And we're playing the Packers in Green Bay, which to me I was so excited about because I'd never been to Lambeau Field. And so it's pregame, and, you know, the players are out kind of milling around and warming up and everything. And one of the Chiefs tight ends, their starting tight end that year, Walter White, came up to me and said, you know, where did Bart Starr make that famous quarterback sneak? And I said, geez, I don't know which hash mark it was, the right side or the left side. I'm not sure if this was the right end zone. And so there was a guy standing over there in a coat and tie and that type of thing. And I could tell he was with the Packers, so I kind of motioned him over and I said, do you know where Bart Starr made that famous run? And he took Walter White and I over to the 1 yard line, left hash mark, the south end zone, and showed us and the whole thing, and it couldn't have been nicer. And I think he was impressed that a player like Walter White actually was aware of the history of what happened right there on that yard line. And so, you know, that was my first meeting with Bob.
We're in Cincinnati. It's about 2006. We're playing the Bengals. I think it was an exhibition game. And you know, on that north end of that stadium down there where the Bengals play, there's this one escalator. It's exposed. It's huge, but it goes way up. And Bob used to like to walk the stadiums and see what the fans were doing, right? And then he goes up the escalator and he's with one of his assistants, and they just happen to be in front of me. And as we get about halfway up, you know, the vertigo was setting in, like, oh my God, this thing is weird. It's open. Right. And he turns back to his assistant and says, man, we would never do this in Green Bay. Can you imagine with our fans? Oh, my God.
Oh, I know, right?
And he's basically saying, do you know how drunk our fans are? I mean, he was always thinking about the fans. Always thinking about the fans.
Tributes to Bob Harlan, Brian Noble, former linebacker, Wayne Laravey, the voice of the Packers, Mark Murphy chiming in, Mike Clemens, myself. Bob Harlan passing away yesterday and doing justice by talking about his legacy today. This portion of the program brought to you by our friends at Levine Ice Burner, the attorneys that actually build the relationship, much like Bob Harlan with the fans, with you when you call them. They're the ones that actually go to court and actually work with you so closely, side by side, whether it's personal injury, estate planning, civil litigation. They've got something for everybody. 608-621-2888. 608-621-2888. Dynamite piece put together by One Grant Bills. Producing back in the studio. Good stuff. That was powerful stuff.
I thought
like
that
you
was
could put that on the Jumbotron at Lambeau Field.
Well, you know, if anyone wants to throw me a couple of bones, I'm available for freelance weekend work. I thought that was Larrivee's best hit on the show in a long time.
That was really good.
I didn't realize that he had a background in Kansas. That whole story of him being with the Chiefs, I was listening. I'm like, Wayne, this is the craziest story I've ever heard. And he's talking about like, I was 23.
Yeah, you didn't know that he was the voice of the Chiefs for a long time?
I did not. I knew he was with the Bears.
Yeah.
I didn't know back before then. But the fact that he was wandering around and saw a Packers guy and just asked, and of course it happens to be Bob Harlan.
Right.
Who then like, I'll take you down on the field and show you.
Yeah.
I get the sense that Bob Harlan just loved talking to people, and that his wife was probably thrilled. Bob Harlan's wife was probably thrilled that he got a chance to speak to all these people throughout the day, because I bet otherwise he just would have came home and just talk her ear off. You know what I mean? Like, he just seems like a guy who needed to converse with everybody. How are you? What's new with you? What's going on here? Like, he had a motor, it seems like, that just wouldn't quit, to the point where he's walking around and chatting with fans just because that's what he wanted to do.
That's exactly right. And the thing about it is with Bob, that I loved, and any broadcaster would love, is you would ask him a question, and he would give you a 2 to 3 minute, 4 minute answer, and kind of just navigate through history and the question and answer it, and then give you a whole lot more than you ever asked for. But he would give you the full story and didn't really hide anything, which was it's if anybody's ever done this business, that's like the epitome of fantastic when you get a chance to talk to somebody like that, because normally you talk to 1 or 2 people and, hey, it's, a couple of word answers and you're like, oh, you're struggling to get through the interview. And not with Bob. Bob was not that way. Bob, as a matter of fact, here's a prime example. He was asked why he didn't replace Ron Wolf with an experienced general manager at the time. Instead, they bring in Ray Rhodes right after Holmgren. That didn't work out. And right after that, Mike Sherman comes in. And then Ron says, I think I'm going to retire. Remember, Holmgren wanted the general manager job in Green Bay. He wanted to be both coach and GM, and Ron Wolf was like, I'm not going anywhere. But a few years later, Ron says, okay, I'm going to step down. So Bob Harlan explains, the question was basically asked, why didn't you replace Ron Wolf with another general manager instead of giving Mike Sherman the head coaching job?
You know what? I'll tell you an interesting story about that. When Ron Wolf retired, which shocked me that he would retire at the age he did, we talked about possibilities of who could come in and replace him. And some of the things I worried about was that we were coming off a very successful season. Brett Favre said it was the best team chemistry he had ever seen since he'd been in Green Bay, and this is following 2 Super Bowl appearances. We had a young scouting staff that really wasn't ready to take over yet, but very capable. And I worried about if a new man came in, he might let all those young scouts go, and then we would suffer. And secondly, I worry if we brought somebody else in over Mike, he might take it well and argue about the point. And so I did something that I regret to this day that I did. I gave him both shots. And I have to tell you that facing those same situations and considering those same things, I might do it again, but it was going against what I really wanted to do. But what I thought might happen is exactly what did happen. Mike Sherman, first of all, found out that the pressure was too much. He became a different person. He quit talking to people. You'd pass him in the hallways at the football complex, and he wouldn't say hello to you. And on the practice field or on the team airplane going on trips, he wouldn't talk to anybody. And then when I went and told him that I was going to relieve him of the general manager duties and go after Ted Thompson, I hadn't even called Ted at that time, but I said, Mike, I owe it to you first to tell you what I plan to do and why. And I said, I want to make the change because it's affecting the kind of person you are. I think it's probably affecting your family life, and you're not helping this organization right now, and you're more capable than this. So we hired Ted, and Ted took a long time before he decided if he could continue to work with Mike. He studied him and studied him. Ted finally comes into me late in August and says, Bob, I think this will work. So we went ahead and did it. But I would go down to practices, man. I not to really watch the practice as much as I wanted to see how Ted and Mike were getting along. And it was a disaster. Ted would be down there talking to him, and Mike would be looking off in the other direction like he didn't care. And so at the end of the year, Ted comes in to me and says, Bob, I've got to make a change. And I said, I'm not the least bit surprised. Go ahead. And we did. But that was a mistake I made, and I regret doing it. But like I say, there were things about the organization that I thought would be affected. Actually, like I said earlier, I thought if we brought somebody in new over Mike, he wouldn't take it well, and he didn't. And he knew Ted Thompson very well. I thought that would make it easier, but Mike just could not accept it. But the record on the field wasn't that bad, but where we suffered was in the draft room.
Yeah, there you go, Bob Harlan. And again, here's the reasons why I did what I did. Here was my thought, and it was wrong, and I regret it. And that was Bob. That was Bob. That was the epitome of Bob Harlan. It was, I had to make a decision. I did what I thought was right. It wasn't right. I'm humble enough to say it was wrong. And I moved on. And then, you kind of gave the transformation a shot, and it never, or I should say the transition, and it just never materialized. And he's a guy that gives it opportunities, and it just didn't work out. So good stuff from Bob Harlan. Speaking of that, the former president, Mark Murphy, joined us in the first hour of the show. You are going to hear that when we come back. I know some of our network affiliates didn't get a chance to get it on their airwaves, so we are going to do that again coming up here in just a little bit. So stay tuned for that. I want to remind you, I mentioned this earlier and I want to get to it, but the third annual Bill Michaels Open is Saturday, May 9th. Now listen up. It's selling faster than we thought. So if you have not gotten in yet, we went from having 15 to 20 spaces available. We're now down to, I think, about 7 to 10 in the last 24 hours. So if you have not gotten a spot yet, I just call. And get your spot in. I think it's $85 a golfer. Just somebody reserve it on your team and then get 4 players together or 3 other players together. The $80 includes not only the golf, but also in addition to that, includes the food. Because remember, Kickapoo Corners is the one that supplies the meal after the fact. But it's myself. Grant Bills is going to be there. Kate did text me back. She's going to be there as well. She's excited to play. So we're all going to be there. The whole gang is going to be everybody but Evo. I don't even know if Evo plays golf, but everybody but Evo. We're all going to be there in Viroqua that weekend. Again, Saturday, May 9th, the Bill Michaels Open. On Friday, we are going to be doing the show live from the golf course, from Viroqua Hills Golf Course. So I'm going to be in Viroqua on Friday and then hanging out there on Friday night and such. Over at Kickapoo, Creekside, and all that kind of good stuff. So we're looking forward to it. But again, if you have not gotten your foursome in, you better do it because they're selling faster than we thought they would, and they're closing in on being sold out. So get it in. Call Scott today, 608-637-7615. 608-637-7615. Again, 608-637-7615. Call and ask for Scott. Get your foursome in now. Do it now and reserve your spot. Otherwise, it's going to be gone. More of the Bill Michaels Show and Mark Murphy, former president of the Green Bay Packers, next.
Ready? This is the Bill Michaels Show on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
Bill Michaels will resume in 5 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 4 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
We had to make a change. We'd gone through 24 years of mediocrity. And those two men, I'll give Ron Wolf and Ted Thompson credit for making tough decisions. And they did everything the way they felt was best for this organization.
To the late, great Bob Harlan. Such a special guy. We remember Bob today. Bob and that legacy that he left with the Green Bay Packers, and the fact that they are still here, they are viable. And this portion of the program brought to you by our friends at Burn Pit Barbecue, burnpitbbq.com. That is burnpitbbq.com, veteran-owned right here in the state of Wisconsin. And they have grown exponentially, and they're one of the best veteran-owned companies in the country now. But go to burnpitbbq.com. They owe it all to you, Wisconsinites. burnpitbbq.com. That is burnpitbbq.com. Joining us now on the hotline, I wish we were talking under better circumstances, but a longtime friend and the former Packers president, Mark Murphy, is here. Mark, how you doing?
Great, I'm doing well. Yeah, like you, I'm really sad to hear of Bob's passing.
Yeah, I remember when I was telling a story when Bob hired me years ago when I was doing the Packers radio network. And, you know, I kind of remember all the words of wisdom that he gave me at the time. So when the torch was passed to you, what stuck out to you about Bob?
Oh, my gosh. He was so generous with his time. I look back on it. And, of course, I was new. You know, I had, no connection to the Packers. And, he and I overlapped. I think we overlapped for 3 months. And he's just so giving of his time, so supportive, so helpful. And I don't know if you remember, originally John Jones was going to be replace Bob as president.
Yeah.
And he ended up having health issues. And so Bob stayed on beyond the age of 70. And, boy, he was so helpful to me, and it couldn't have been more gracious. And just that's the way he is. He's just such a good person. He was great.
I remember Bob telling me a long time ago that he would answer the phone and talk to fans and all that kind of stuff. And I remember wondering out loud one day on the air, I wonder if Mark Murphy's going to do that too. And I got flooded with people that called and said, yeah, Mark's actually called me back or sent me a letter or whatever, or helped us out with tickets. And, if there's anything that any president takes from the legacy of Bob Harlan, it's that, hey, never forget about the fans because they're what makes this whole thing great.
Well, and especially, with an organization as unique as the Packers, we're owned by the fans, and you need to treat them with respect. Now, that's not to say there were sometimes you get calls like, okay, well, yeah, we're on a losing streak, not doing well, and they're sharing their opinions. But no, Bob was such a gentleman, and setting aside, talk about him as a person and what a great person he was, and so positive, and always had time for everybody. But he completely turned the trajectory of the Packers organization around. You think from the 60s, the great success with Lombardi, but then the 70s and 80s. Bill, when I was playing with the Redskins in the late 70s and early 80s, my secondary coach is a man named Richie Pettibone, and I remember I made a bad play once, and in the film review, he said, "Murph, you keep playing like that, we're going to ship you off to Green Bay." That's how Green Bay was viewed then. It's like nobody wanted to go to Green Bay, and Bob obviously started the process of changing that. And what he did with the stadium is phenomenal. In the 70s again, in the 80s, Lambeau Field was kind of just a regular stadium. It was like a green tin box, and he completely changed it. And boy, I can only imagine the time and effort that he put in to getting that referendum passed. That was that was really something special. And what a difference! That money that the state invested, it's put the Packers and Lambeau Field now in position where financially, the next renovations we paid for by ourselves.
Yeah,
we need state money.
I remember being with Bob kind of on the campaign trail because we were covering it obviously very heavily. And I remember being with him on the night of the referendum. And we were sitting at one of the halls up there, and he was sitting in a chair and he was still shaking hands and talking to people. And I talked to him a couple of times. I said, "Bob, what's plan B?" Because he was really sweating. And he said, "Bill, I don't have a plan B. I don't have a plan B. I don't know what we're going to do." And he was really genuinely scared. And like you said, what he did with the stadium.
It was a close vote, right?
Yeah.
53 to 47. That was close.
Right. And with everything that went on, I thought, and then after it was developed, what Bob said at Outgoing, I remember the day that you guys were being introduced and you were doing your press conference, and I was talking to Bob, and he said, Mark, I gave him the same advice I had, was just hire good football people, let them do their thing, worry about the business. And I got to think, Mark, that he said, "Hey, I'm turning it over to you. We've got a new start now, and now you've just got to expound upon it. And what you've done with Titletown and everything that's gone on up there to keep that franchise viable, it's amazing. It's the smallest media market in all of major sports, anywhere. And it thrives and survives. And that was all started by Bob and then passed the torch to you and what you guys have accomplished."
No, it's a very unique organization. And one of the things that's so unique, and that Bob started this, was the annual tailgate tour. Bob and I, my very first year, he came along on the tailgate tour, and just to see him interacting with fans across the state, and and then the interaction also with current players. And we normally would take 3 current players and 3 former players on the tailgate tour, and that's. Bob started that. That's so unique.
Yeah. Yeah, he always like I said, he always wanted to touch base with the fans. The one thing I was always appreciative of, he came from the media side of things, so he kind of got it that, hey, when things are really good, you don't necessarily need us, but when things are bad and you want to promote different things like charity events and things like that and good things in the community and that feel good, he always said, "Hey, I'll never forget you guys." And he always told me, he said, "Say what you want, as long as it's never personal, I'll never critique it." But he would call, he would say, "Hey, this is wrong," or "This is what something said." And, but he was always good like that, but he would always call when he heard something really nice too. And I never forgot that about Bob. That was the class. And you were that way. I'd see you in the hallways and you never, came up and railed on me or anything like that. And it was always something I felt was just passed down and respected.
Yeah, and I think I feel Ed Policy is the same way. Well, and the other thing with Bob, he had a media PR background, so he's very, very sensitive to what the issues that you were facing.
Yeah. What if you got one memory to share before I let you go of Bob that you could just kind of reach into the bag and say this is special to me? What would that be if you can tell it?
Sure. I think it's in that very first few months, and on the tailgate tour, just seeing him interacting, as I said before, with fans, and just he was so natural, and he was very, very eloquent in terms of when he spoke. It was really you could tell that it wasn't his first rodeo.
Yeah.
he was so genuine, and the other thing that I noticed is how beloved he was by the fans here, and that continued obviously beyond his retirement.
Well, his legacy continues on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Lambeau Field is what it is because of him. It was nothing really special before, and success of the Packers. Bill, one of the I've always, how you measure the success of a hero is, did you leave the organization better than you found it? Boy, that's not even close. You think of what the Packers were when Bob started, and where they were when it ended. It was completely different.
Yeah. No doubt. Mark, it's a pleasure. Congratulations on everything that you guys have accomplished. What started with Bob, you expounded upon. Obviously, the NFL draft, everything's been great. Appreciate your time so much, okay?
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. Thanks, Bill.
There you go. Mark Murphy, former president of the Green Bay Packers, joining us for a couple of minutes earlier today and sharing some of his thoughts when it came to Bob Harlan, as Bob Harlan passes away yesterday at the age of 89. Let's do this. We'll break. We'll come back. We'll wrap it up. This portion of the program brought to you by our friends at German Fest. Don't forget July 25th, 26th, and 27th. We love festing in the state of Wisconsin. That's for damn sure. And on the Milwaukee tradition on the lakefront, it is German Fest. Go to GermanFest.com. That's GermanFest.com. One note before we go to break. Now, Bill Huber's reporting that, and others, saying that the Rashawn Gary post, which was on Rashawn Gary's official page, they're saying his page was hacked. My guess is that somebody in the office, somebody on the representation side posted that maybe a little prematurely as they're trying to work something out with the Packers, or maybe it's, they're a little in between, but they were saying that his account has been hacked. It was a pretty official looking post. So I don't know if it was hacked or maybe it was just a little premature, but nevertheless, that's the report. So we'll see if it actually comes to fruition before it's all said and done. But my guess is maybe they just posted it a little prematurely, but nevertheless, it's still true. So anyway, hold on to your seats. Rashawn Gary not completely gone just yet. Stay tuned. More of the Bill Michaels Show coming up next.
This is the Bill Michaels Show on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
Down goes hunger. Down goes hunger. That's the call when you take your first bite at Home Field Pub and Social. With a chef-driven food roster that's stacked with flavor. From starting lineup appetizers to all-star plates and sandwiches to Hall of Fame desserts. It's all worthy of a highlight reel. Because this isn't your basic game day fare. This is crave-worthy food with enough flavor to make your taste buds do a touchdown dance. And if you're ready to play, step into the Topgolf Swing Suite and take your shot at glory. Swing, sip, and snack your way through every clutch moment. So the next time someone asks where you were when hunger lost the title match, you say Home Field Pub and Social, where it's game day every day. In the heart of Titletown, right next to Lambeau Field.
Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
And I went out running errands on a day that I had off. I come back to my place, and I got an answering machine message from Bob Harlan. Are you kidding me? He was such a gracious man, and we as Packer fans should be so proud of that lineage. You know, Lombardi and Bob Harlan and Mark Murphy and now Ed Policy, so much to be proud of.
My brother-in-law, Paul, was dying of brain cancer. He was 41 years old. Avid Packer fan. We went to many games together. I wanted to try to get him to a game, before he passed. So I called the Green Bay Packers, requested if I could purchase some wheelchair seats. 2 weeks later, I get a call from Bob Harlan. And for 20 minutes, told him the story, told him, what was going on. He put aside 2 tickets and also a parking pass that I parked my car probably 10 feet from the elevator that goes up to the skybox.
1987, Don Bukowski's rookie year. Most fans will remember he wore the number 5. I sent a letter to Bob Harlan, who at the time was an administrative assistant, just saying, hey, I thought that number was retired and blah, blah, blah. My wife came home and the phone rang. And my wife is a diehard Viking fan. Picked up the phone. It was Bob Harlan on the phone, who had to have looked up my number of information because I didn't put my phone number in the letter. I still have a copy of it. My wife, who's calling, and he said something to the effect of, well, I don't think you'll believe me when I tell you. And so he got information as far as when I'd be home and everything from work. He called me that late afternoon, and we talked for about 15, 20 minutes on the phone. And he explained the whole rationale as far as, well, I can't retire every number, and it turned out later Bukowski, went to number 7. That's the first thing I think of when I think of Bob Harlan.
Tributes all day pouring in remembrances of Bob Harlan and the legacy that he leaves for Packers Nation and just for people in general. This portion of the program brought to you by our good friends at Denny's, 2nd and National, Walker's Point, also on Watertown Road in Pewaukee. Don't forget, opening day is not far away, and we are going to be live down there on March 26th. March 26th, less than 3 weeks away, as a matter of fact, at the location at 2nd and National Walker's Point. It's our traditional opening day broadcast, and we're really looking forward to it. And if you're going to, head out and you're going to the game, or maybe you just want to come out and enjoy with every other Brewers fan, come on down and hang out with us, grab one of the award-winning Bloody Marys, some great wings or food along the way, and then if you're going to go to the game, take the shuttle over. If you're not, stay and hang out with everybody and watch it down at Stenny's, 2nd and National Walker's Point. And don't forget, they're going to be running shuttles from Lake Country, and North Shore is now going to be open. Next weekend, North Shore officially opens. Yeah, I kid you not. They're affiliated with the District 5 Ice Barn, which is just behind it. They got a hockey rink inside of Stenny's. It's fantastic. Stenny's North Shore getting ready to open right there on West Donges Bay Road in Mequon. So that'll be their third location. Congratulations to them on the growing success that they have had. But we're going to be down there for opening day and looking forward to it. Grant Bills, anything before we get out of here that we have not touched on today, other than the fact that others are now saying that Rashawn Gary's account has indeed been hacked, which it's one thing if you just write it out and say, hey, it's great to be with Packers fans, blah, 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 I'm leaving. It's another thing to have that kind of a post. I think it's a little premature is all it is, but nevertheless, that's at least what's being reported right now is that his account was hacked.
Yeah, I'm sure it was hacked. Bill, I don't often hack people's accounts, but when I do, I find mid to slightly below average pass rushers, and I post premature release statements. That's if I had the capability of hacking accounts, that's what I do. No, he wasn't hacked.
Holy crap, that's dripping with sarcasm.
The Packers just they weren't ready for this to get out.
Right.
Either they still wanted to keep exploring trades or whatever. So I would bet dollars to donuts what happened here. No, I don't have anything to add other than that. I think your best shows are the shows where I'm not needed very often, because that means we have great guests. We have great calls. You know what I mean? It's rolling. And today was one of those days. I thought Larrivee was incredible. Mark Murphy was great. And it was just cool to sit back and listen to Brian Noble too. So,
yeah.
I enjoyed the show a lot. Sad circumstance, but
right,
a life really well lived. He lived almost 90, so we're not talking about someone who died too young. I mean, you can always live longer, sure, but a pretty cool day of remembrance.
And like I said earlier today, my day started off in such a cool way. I'd sent a note to Kevin Harlan right when I found, like when you had texted me and said, hey, can you come on the air? And I found out that Bob had passed. Before you and I got together on your show yesterday, I had sent a real quick note and just said, hey, it's Bill Michaels. Just can't even tell you how sorry I am, yada, yada, whatever. And I did not expect to hear back. I mean, this is a tough time for everybody. And Kevin Harlan wrote a really nice note this morning and, saying, that sending my best to you and Kristen and the gang. And, it just... I'm sending my best to him and thoughts and prayers and hugs and the whole thing. And he's sending it back to us. And he just said, the one segment that I will read, he just said, he was the most wonderful dad and man. I loved him so much and a blessing beyond measure. And I think that's probably the best way to end today's show when it comes to Bob Harlan and the tributes that have poured in. So hopefully for those, it's a little bit of a different sports day today, but if you're in Packers Nation, you know exactly how everybody is feeling and you understand it. And you understand where the legacy is now from what was started back, when Bob took over. First thing he had to do was get the team right. He did that. They got to a Super Bowl. Then he had to make sure that the succession plan was in order. Then he had to make sure that the business was in order and that the team was going to be viable and the franchise was going to remain in Green Bay and wasn't going to dissolve or go anywhere else. And he did everything he could to keep it here. And now it is thriving and surviving and just big and bold and great. And now it's into the next generation. Ed Policy now takes it over. So just so many good things to remember regarding, Bob Harlan and his legacy in Green Bay. So there you go.
It's funny you mention Kevin, because I've never been around Bob Harlan. And that's why I didn't have much to add to today's show. I've been around Kevin a couple of times. And if he's anything like his dad, I get it.
Yeah.
Because the personality and the personableness. I mean, he knows that. He knows everybody. He talked to everybody. There's a light in his face and in his eyes. And even just watching videos of Bob Harlan, I'm like, there's something there.
Yeah.
The extra charisma, the personableness, you can see it even in Kevin. So it's very clear to see that he's a lot like his dad.
Go out and enjoy the weekend. We have had one hell of a day of tribute. Maybe raise a glass in honor of the Packers and Bob Harlan and the legacy and the man that he was. And then we'll all reconvene come Monday, 10 a.m. Central Time. We'll get right back at it. And that's the beginning. That is the beginning of free agency. So we may hear things fast and furious over the weekend. We'll react to it on Monday and then get back at it. Go Badgers over the weekend. Big game coming up tomorrow against Purdue down in West Lafayette, 3 o'clock Central Time. Be glued to the television for that one. But until we talk again on Monday, well, Grant, you got a couple hour show. You got 4 to 6, but